Welcome back to another FPL reaction stream, the final one of the calendar year as we are approaching 2026, and I'll be going through every single question posted today. A big up to all the new members, subscribers, likers, and also viewers of the channel. And if you do have a membership now and you're like, wow, what a nice Christmas present, the person to thank is Paredes, who gifted 50 memberships in the last deadline stream. So a legend of the channel, of course, and of the community. The same goes to Napstars, Ahmed and Ahmad, for all the support they've given. And let's just keep the show going. I'll be gifting 10 memberships at the beginning of 2026, so in just around a week's time, probably for the next deadline stream or the one after, I'd say. So on the 30th of December, there'll be no gift memberships from me personally, but in the one after, the first one of 2026, you will be in with a chance of getting a membership for an entire month, and that means prior to comments, also early access to my videos, and many other perks. But I'll delve into all the results from today. And of course, we had an amazing match yesterday on Boxing Day between Manchester United and Newcastle, which I was subjected to watching throughout its entirety. And yeah, it wasn't the best of experiences, but it is what it is, right? Matheus Cunha, amazing transfer from me. And the same goes for Jurrien Timber, who is now injured. But still some positives. I'm currently on a green arrow somehow, and we've got 2 matches left tomorrow, and Nathaniel Klein is my only remaining player. There was a massive swing going for Robert Sanchez in goal over Martin Dubravka, who is set to get 10 points after the bonus is added. Ekitike, captain over Haaland, has paid off slightly, but still quite disappointing from the Frenchman. And a few decent returns here and there from Harry Wilson, Igor Thiago, but still very disappointing in the grand scheme of things. Matty Cash is suspended for Gameweek 19 against Arsenal. The same goes for Kamara, so 2 key players for Aston Villa will miss out. They got a very impressive win at Stamford Bridge after being 1-0 down, and they're now 3rd in the Premier League table and putting the pressure on Man City and Arsenal as well. So let's get straight into your comments as always. Later on, I'll be delving into FPL Challenge, the FDR, predicted points, and also some injury updates on Calafiori and Jurrien Timber. And of course, Gabriel returned with the Arsenal squad. He actually was subbed on towards the end of the game as Arsenal saw out a 2-1 victory over Brighton, but kind of the same old story with Arsenal. Great first half, should have buried the game completely, and the finishing has definitely left a lot to be desired, and they looked very shaky in the second half. Raya made one of the best saves of the season to preserve the 3 points. Good to see you, Sean. I can't even speak today. It's good to see you here, and thank you for the comment. The same goes to Monkey Trousers. Fantastic name here. Thanks for the membership. Totally unexpected. Yeah, Paredes is the one to thank for that one. He gifted 50 memberships yesterday in the Boxing Day deadline stream. Busy says 49 with Calvert-Lewin to play. Solid score, and that's probably a green arrow in most ranks, even the upper echelons of Fantasy Premier League. We'll see how Calvert-Lewin does against Sunderland tomorrow. I wouldn't be that optimistic in general, but you'll definitely get 50 plus points unless something goes horribly wrong, and it should be a green arrow nonetheless for you. Dallo got the assist from his throw-in, despite being cleared by Voltemada to Dorgu, who hits the goal on the volley. Rodgers does a clear pass to Watkins, who scores but no assist. Really don't get it. I did cover the assists in the key changes to FPL video, and this was made in the summer, in the build-up to Game Week 1. And with the assists, they do have clear definition, so to speak, and they made a few adjustments to how assists work this season, but there are always inconsistencies, and we've seen plenty of examples over the years. I think Jarrod Bowen didn't get a clear assist against Tottenham last season. One of the, I think, best examples to really point towards the lack of consistency when it comes to the assist being granted or not. Is Voltemada a good option at Burnley away? Yes, he is, but I think Voltemada is much stronger in home matches, and I don't see him scoring a brace or hat-trick against Burnley. I think 1 goal, maybe bonus points as possible. We've only seen that once in an away game, and that was against Brighton. And Newcastle ended up losing that game anyway. But yeah, Voltemada is an interesting one. I still like him as a forward, and I talked about this before the Chelsea game as well, but I prefer Jarrod Bowen, and I think the clear standouts right now are Haaland and Ekitike. Thiago will still do fairly decent. We saw him get an assist today. He was heavily involved in the goals, despite Kevin Schade stealing the show with the hat-trick. But I think with the forward line, you've got plenty of options, not many standouts as the 3rd choice, but we've got 2 good choices here who are probably the best by some distance right now. That could obviously change, but Ekitike was still quite underwhelming today as well. So yeah, he's a good option, but I don't think he's necessary, and nor do I think he should be sold by those that bought him in for the United game. Surely that was an assist from Rodgers. Yeah, that's what I mean. A lot of people will have this these debates as well. I welcome the discussion, and I might even put out a poll and see what people think. Should Rodgers have been awarded the assist or not? Ollie Watkins, of course, scoring a brace off the bench and giving Aston Villa all 3 points, and they are Arsenal's bogey team, so I'm very much looking forward to their match on the 30th of December, and yeah, it's going to be a good one. All my City players blanked, same here, O'Reilly, Foden and Haaland, but those with Cherky, of course, will feel very differently, and Gvardiol was the one getting the assist too. Thiago and Semenyo out for Ekitike and Cherky for a -4 in Gameweek 19. I still like Thiago, and of course we saw Semenyo score in that same match, but that's an interesting one. I like both duos. Because you're taking a -4 hit, I would probably say no. Klein is crazy. Well, he's 3.8 million. I bought him on the wild card. We'll see how he does against Tottenham, but my prediction was 1-0 Crystal Palace. If that's the case and Klein starts, then it should be decent, but it probably won't be that simple. 31 with Lefebvre and Mukiele to play. Yeah, not great, but 2 decent options on paper. I would back Sunderland to win that match, and hopefully you can get to 40+ points and secure Green Arrow or get closer to the safety score so you're in a decent position for Gameweek 19 and beyond. Yeah, that match on Friday was so boring I fell asleep. I didn't fall asleep, but I think anyone who did, you just couldn't blame them because it was a bit of a snooze fest. 28 points behind you at the moment. Yeah, look, that's not too shabby. I mean, I tend to not look at rank too much at this stage of the season. I'm fairly happy with where I am, but the most frustrating part is the last 2 game weeks before this one, I've gotten small reds after months of progress. There's always going to be some ups and downs in FPL, but yeah, I think ultimately that's a decent sort of position to be in at this stage of the campaign. Only blank I have is Palmer with Xhaka left to play. That's very solid, and it's a sign of a good team if you have 10 players returning. Cole Palmer, very disappointing today. I still don't fully trust him yet because he had injury problems all season with the groin, and even the minutes aren't completely secure. We saw him subbed off before 80 minutes again today, but at least he's building up the match sharpness and getting more than 57 minutes, which we saw just a couple of weeks ago. But we need to see more from Palmer, and hopefully more premiums rise to the surface so we can challenge Erling Haaland for the captaincy more often. I have 42 points, nobody to play. Decent score. No one left isn't ideal, but hopefully you can secure Green Arrow. It ultimately depends, though, on your rank, and the best website to check your progress is livefpl.net. You can see your safety score, and that'll be based on your sort of rank position, and that's going to change for different people. Someone in the top 10k will have a much different safety score compared to someone who's not in the top 1 million, for example. So yeah, JFT Gunner saying, how did Rodgers not get the assist? I agree. But I think the poll is probably worth putting out. I think it could be quite one-sided, actually. Why did Minter not play? Well, Brighton went for a back 3. They went for something a little bit different, but he was a game changer when he came on. He was very threatening, and he was the one who forced that amazing save from David Raya. So I was quite surprised by Minter not starting, but it also allowed them to start both Kadioglu and De Kuyper as wing-backs, essentially. And Gomez, of course, scored Brighton's only goal. But Minter will start the next game. I'm fairly sure of that. Yesterday, in most scenarios, I told people to bench Minter. It could have turned out differently, even off the bench, scoring that goal, but Raya had other ideas, and I think Minter still has decent value to offer, but he has been very disappointing now for over a month, and I also bought him for a West Ham game only a couple of weeks ago, and it was a big disappointment, and I sold him shortly afterwards. Thank you, Christopher. Once again, it's going to be Paredes the one to thank. I don't want to take the credit for that, but yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed the membership, and just keep your eyes peeled because you'll get early access to my videos before anybody else, and that's going to be one of the main perks. And also, you'll get priority to comments. That's going to be very important in deadline streams where things get hectic, but it ensures that your questions and comments will be answered. Good evening. I can't really be mad about that United performance when we had over half of the best starting 11 missing and we ended the match with mostly kids. I think United played well in the first half and they deserved the lead, but in the second half, it was a completely different story. Subbing off Casemiro for Fletcher was a very strange decision, and you could tell by Casemiro's reaction. I think it said it all, but United were quite toothless, and I think a draw would have been a fair result. Newcastle dominated the second half, United controlled the first, but yeah, United got the win, and that's all that matters, really. This year, can't do anything right. Ekitike and Rice for Saka and Thiago didn't really work out. Just bought Cunha too. As soon as deadline passes, getting Gabriel for Timber. Well, that's the good thing, right? If Timber is ruled out for the long term, and I've got an update about him very soon, yeah, I think Gabriel would be the best replacement for him. And what we could see actually is Lewis Skelly. Well, he's another injury doubt actually, and I'm going to cover that soon as well. But we're probably going to see Hincapie as the left back, and then Gabriel with Saliba in central defence, and then Rice as the right back. So Arsenal are decimated by injuries at the moment in their defensive line. They've got so many options in that position, and yet most of them are injured right now. As for the nothing's going right in FPL, I think we all have moments where we feel like that's the case, especially when it's consecutive weeks, maybe even a longer time frame where decisions go against you. You make a transfer, you lose out on points, you buy 2 players in, the duo you sold is somehow going to end up doing better. These things can happen, but I'll be honest, Saka and Thiago against Ekitike Rice, that's quite close, and that could always go either way. So next week it could be Ekitike Rice who outperformed the other two, but that could change week on week. So we're talking about quality FPL assets here, and there could always be that sort of swing that goes against you short term. 58 with Xhaka left, got 10 bonus coming in too. That's a great score. So if you've got 68 with the bonus coming in, that is very impressive this week. Thanks for being one of the lucky 50 top guy. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people. As someone pointed out yesterday, it's like almost a quarter of the viewers getting a membership. So yeah, it was great work from Paredes, and ultimately I keep telling him, you don't have to do it because you've already done so much for the channel, but it was very kind of him, and hopefully people enjoy the membership and all the perks that come with it. Best mid for 7.9 million and under already have Cunha. I think Rice, and I said this before the deadline yesterday, but I went for Cunha for a short-term punt, and I also like the Wolves game coming up, so I'm still quite bullish on Cunha, and he had a lot of shots yesterday. I think he's now on 50 shots for the campaign, but some of them were speculative efforts and from sort of awkward angles, let's say. But Cunha will do fairly decent over the next couple of weeks. I still like him, but Declan Rice is the most consistent long-term. The only downside to him right now is that he's playing right back, so he might get more defensive contributions, but in terms of the goals and assists, I think that will be more limited, but he's still got an assist today from the set piece. Need a Mukiele masterclass to save the free hit on a red arrow with less points than my actual team. That's far from ideal. I hate it when I play a limitless in UCL Fantasy or free hit in FPL and my original team scores more points. That's what happened to me in the Champions League this season, and it's one of the worst feelings you can get in a fantasy football game. But these things can happen, right? And I think the free hit this season has been very difficult to nail down because usually we use it in a blank or double and you almost guarantee gaining points either way, even if you have the worst case scenario. But this season it's a little bit different. Hi from Zimbabwe. Thank you very much to Buju Man. Good to see you here. 50 Mukiele tomorrow. Good score. I'd argue that's actually great this week, and hopefully Mukiele can do well for you. But yeah, Sunderland Leeds is quite difficult to call. My prediction was 2-0. I have to check though my scoreline predictions. It's possible that I haven't got a single one correct this week, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Saka to Cunha and Wilson to Rice. I like both transfers in, and I think this week the duo you're bringing in will outscore the ones you're selling, but I still like Saka, and he's getting 7 points today. He's been on a great run for the past 7 game weeks, only 1 blank in that time frame. With the rest, he's gotten 4+ points, and he's either getting DEFCON, goals, assists. I talked about this with one viewer yesterday. I agree with him that Saka needs to score more goals, but he is still very consistent with the output, and we see that mainly with the assists. So that can always backfire a little bit. Wilson offers good value as well. He got an assist on top of the booking, but I think Cunha and Rice is an upgrade. I don't think they gave Rodgers the assist because it rebounded off the keeper and hit him before going in. Harsh if given, harsh if it isn't, says Twisted Parky. Jose says captaining Verts worked out, 20k. It did. I think a lot of people would have had that sort of expectation on Ekitike, and it was quite disappointing because once you see Haaland blank, you think this is a great opportunity to make up some ground and build a commanding lead, essentially. If Haaland had scored, I'd be on a red arrow quite comfortably. So, yeah, for the Verts captaincy to pull through the way it did, that's very impressive, and we could see more consistency now from him. And over the past 4 game weeks, he has gotten a few goal contributions. He has now finally scored his first Liverpool goal, and he is a quality player, but it has been a poor start to the season for him. Let's see if he can kick on now and build some real momentum going into 2026. Good to see you, Arthur Nice. JW says bench 1, Rice, Foden, Bowen, Gordon. Interesting question, and not an easy one, but I would be tempted to say Rice. As much as I like Rice, Aston Villa is a very tough game. Very good question, but yeah, that would be my current preference. Yeah, Timber to Gabriel, that is firmly on radar for me. I will go through the latest updates from Mikel Arteta straight after the 2-1 win over Brighton, and he talked about Calafiori, Gabriel, and Lewis Skelly. Yeah, agreed. Bournemouth are winless in 9 Premier League matches, and Semenyo has been the only decent player in the last couple of games, but before that, of course, he was blanking time after time again. And Bournemouth, they were much better at this stage last season, and they started this campaign quite well, but there was a degree of overperformance which Iraola has recognised, and they are missing, obviously, all those departures in the summer. They are missing them big time. And Petrovic hasn't been as good as Kepa last season. You look at Zabani, of course, and Howson. They gave real stability at the back. Even Kirkes, of course, was solid. I don't think Truffert has been that bad, but Bournemouth have really struggled. They've had a few injury problems as well, but yeah, it's just not really clicking for them at the moment. Should Wilson be transferred out this game week? Not necessarily. Anderson from Fulham to Chow. Long term, that's a good move. I just think that Newcastle defensively are much more solid than Fulham, and you're looking at some tough fixtures now for Fulham. Crystal Palace and Liverpool up next. I don't expect a clean sheet either, but then again, I thought West Ham would score a goal or two against Fulham, and they were able to keep the clean sheet. So I don't think Anderson's a must-sell, but I think Chow is an upgrade long-term. Arthur Nice says, on the free hit, 52 points with Dominic Calvert-Lewin to play and Semenyo off the bench for Grealish. Very solid. I never liked Grealish, to be honest, but at least that paid off for you, and you're getting those Semenyo points. But yeah, that's pretty solid, actually. I think with a free hit, you'd probably expect or want more points, but if it secures a green arrow, and especially if your normal team would have been significantly worse, then I think you can be quite happy with that. Your take on Gordon? I think Bruno Guimaraes is the best Newcastle midfielder, but Gordon has shown decent form recently with a few 10-pointers over the last couple of weeks, including one against Chelsea. And against Burnley away, I think he's got a decent shot at getting a return, but he was very frustrating against United. I think his end product was poor, and I think with Newcastle, you've got Voltemada up front, Bruno Guimaraes and Chow. Those are the 3 best Newcastle assets overall. And then you're looking at Anthony Gordon, who is very inconsistent. Christopher says free hit. I'll try to incorporate this into my best wildcard squad video, and if there is enough demand, maybe I'll make it into a separate podcast. But yeah, later on, I'm not going to guarantee it, but going to the website fpl.team, maybe I'll build a sort of like provisional, very quick free hit team, and then we can reassess this later in the week. 54 all out, good score. That should be a green arrow, so I'm very happy with that. And ultimately, I've got 42 and 1 player left, and I just don't see Klein getting a massive return. So yeah, 54 points is solid. 51 points on Alderete to play. Make a quick change captain from Haaland to Ekitike. I have a big headache who to bench next game week. Semenyo, Rice, Cherki, Cunha, Minter, Thiago. That's a close one between Minter and Rice to bench. At the moment, I would lean towards benching Rice. I still think he's the best midfielder, but for Game Week 19 specifically, I would be tempted to bench him. Tete playing well, got me 15 points last 2 game weeks. Very well played. I mean, who would have thought Tete would get that many points right? But these things can happen. Long term, I don't really like him, especially over the next 2. But yeah, you can keep him as your 4th or 5th defender. That's not too shabby. But I would be careful about looking too much into the last 2 game weeks and thinking he can sustain this, because I don't think that's the case personally, but maybe you feel differently. Any transfer plans this game week? Well, the kind of immediate one, after selling Hincapié to Timber, which ironically actually resulted in me having Klein and Anderson in my starting 11, which is not too shabby, but I think it pushes me towards Timber to Gabriel. And I will go through the Timber injury update, which isn't really too much actually. I don't think it's a serious problem, and I think before the game started and the lineup came out, the reports indicated that Arsenal were managing Timber's load and making sure he's not playing too many minutes, but Arteta suggested that during the Crystal Palace game in the Carabao Cup, Jurriën Timber landed awkwardly, so that's why he didn't feature against Brighton Hove Albion. Yeah, Cunha captain against Wolves is an option, but he is very inconsistent and unreliable. He's only got 3 goals and 1 assist this season, and I'd be more inclined to captain Haaland still, although he is facing Sunderland away. And I just think with Cunha, He would be in my top 5, I believe, and you will see my captaincy list in my team selection and the deadline stream, but I don't have enough confidence in him this season to go for him as the out-and-out best option like I did with Ekitike this week. I don't think Rodgers will get the assist retrospectively, no. What we could see is defensive contributions being altered and bonus points from the Friday and Saturday games, but not the assist added retrospectively unless Opta gave Rodgers the official assist, which they're not going to do. So as a result, FPL are not going to do the same thing, and that's why the assist will not be given. Virgil to Gabriel and Mukiele to Heaven. Well, Aiden Heaven played really well against Newcastle, to be fair, and that was United's second clean sheet of the Premier League season. Wolves at home next. It's a good entry point, so I don't really blame you there. I would only sell Mukiele to Heaven if you need to do that to buy Gabriel, but to be honest with you, I think Virgil to Gabriel is enough. If you have enough money for that, make that transfer, but I would avoid the other one. Should I prioritize Cunha or Dorgu? I still prefer Cunha. The Dorgu, of course, 17 points, fantastic volley against Newcastle, and it was between him and Aiden Heaven for man of the match. Pieter says, I don't really care about FPL giving that assist or not, but I hate how we have these fantasy assists, and it always makes it harder to decide when to give them or not. I just go with real assists. Yeah, I think that would remove a lot of grey area. So if a player is awarded the assist in real life by Opta, then we know where we stand, right? It removes a bit of confusion. So I agree with you from that perspective, but I think it is kind of typical for many fantasy games to have, you know, a shot that hits the post and then someone scores a tap in that results in a assist being given. I think people have different opinions about that, but I understand where you're coming from. Guess who started Petrovic over Dubravka? This guy. Look, I'm not even going to act like I'm some sort of Nostradamus or anything, but I was asked this question yesterday and I preferred Dubravka, but I can't really speak because I started Sanchez over him and I lost out on 7 points, so it is what it is, right? Best captain and vice captain for next week? Well, currently I'm looking at Haaland captain, but Sunderland is one of those games where you could maybe see City slipping up, and even today they weren't great, and Forest gave them a real go, but I think Haaland is still going to be the go-to captain. In terms of alternatives, I think Cunha would be up there, but I think Fernandes was the one, and unfortunately he's injured. I would have been really keen to captain him instead, but yeah, with Cunha, I just don't have that same level of confidence that I do with Bruno Fernandes. Yeah, Aiden Heaven, 8 points. Yeah, I still prefer Mukiele long-term, but that's something worth looking at if you need that sort of budget defender and an entry point into that United defence, but only 2 clean sheets this season. I think Newcastle should have scored, but there was some wasteful finishing in there, and they were a bit toothless in the attack. I just have 31 after deducting 4 with Rodon and Dominic Calvert-Lewin left. Not much hope for me. Yeah, I get that. It's a very frustrating week. Quite low scoring for a lot of us, and that's probably going to be a red arrow, unfortunately, but hopefully, for your, in your case, the Leeds players can do something for you. And of course, a clean sheet from Rodon and a goal from Calvert-Lewin would change things entirely, but yeah, I think the probability is quite low. Hopefully things go well for you, but yeah, I think with tomorrow's matches, it's going to push me down to a red arrow personally, and this could be the same thing for a lot of people watching. Are you keeping Wilson in Gameweek 19? That's the current plan. My biggest issue is during Timber, and I could sell him to Gabriel. Wirtz was class today. He played very well, and I'm quite surprised actually that Liverpool only won 2-1 against Wolves, but there is still an element of vulnerability there. But Wirtz is playing quite well over the past couple of weeks. I think Deceptive Banana and a few viewers have pointed towards Wirtz showing real form, so they invested quite early on him, and I was quite dismissive of it. So it's good that people went for it early, and they're seeing some good results FPL-wise. Bruno return date? Well, Amrim seemed to suggest 3 weeks, and he made these comments a couple of days ago, so just before Christmas. So we could see Bruno Fernandes return for Gameweek 21 or 22. I think the more likely scenario is that he misses the City game and he returns afterwards. I'm a United fan, and I think Sesko and Cunha will get a goal on Tuesday. I hope you're right, Max, at least with the Cunha one. Sesko hasn't been great. He has a lot of potential, and obviously Arsenal were linked to him, but yeah, I think Sesko, he had that shot, of course, that hit the crossbar. That was a really good one, but he just really struggled to impact the game. Cunha had a few moments, but he was quite disappointing, and the yellow card topped things off. As a City fan, Cherki would do better than Foden. Well, recently he's been doing better, as in the last 2 game weeks, but before that, Foden was the one stepping up and helping City get some really important results, like the 3-2 win against Leeds, 5-4 against Fulham. But I've seen a few people talk about Foden and saying they expect him now to blank in 3-4 consecutive games. He's currently on 2 back-to-back blanks. Let's see if he makes it 3 after game week 19. Would he do Van den Berg to Dorgu? Would give funds to enable Rice or Gordon to Rodgers in 20? I would not sell Rice to Rodgers. I know you're talking about game week 20, where Rodgers looks more appealing, but if you were to sell one of them, it would be Gordon. Ultimately, I'd say yes. I'd rather have a United defender than Van den Berg. But so far this season, both Brentford and United have been quite poor defensively. So I'm not that keen on Dorgu, but if you were ever to buy him, I think now's a good time because he's facing Wolves at home. He gives you funds to then do Gordon to Rodgers in 20, and I think United could keep 1 or 2 clean sheets over the next 5 game weeks. Agustin says, 53 y 2 por jugar, pudo ser peor, firmo un 0-0 en Sunderland en contra Leeds. Bueno, te digo la verdad, 53 es muy bueno en esta jornada y tiene mucho sentido que quieres un 0-0 entre esos dos equipos. 4-4-2 or 3-5-2? Well, a lot depends on the players in question, right? But I think in the grand scheme of things, I think a 3-5-2 is still my preference. So in the midfield, you're looking at Saka, Rice, and I get why a lot of people don't want to double up on the Arsenal midfield, but I think both of them are good options in their own right. You've got Rodgers, Semenyo, even one of Bruno Guimaraes or Gordon. I wouldn't go for both of them, though. You've got budget midfielders like Wilson, although now I think people will start to sell him over the coming weeks. And there are plenty more that came from. Enzo Fernandez is still decent. Some might even go Cole Palmer, Mateus Cunha. And there are a few more that I've probably forgotten to mention at this point, but I think I'd rather go for the 3-5-2 in most scenarios. Why didn't Calafrio not play? It was injury related. Yeah, with Arsenal, unfortunately, Gabriel's back. Great news, but then Timber and Calafrio are both injured. So it's kind of been the story of the season. Arsenal doing quite well to be top, but yeah, there are some worrying signs there for the Gunners. I'll talk about the Calafrio update very soon. De Ligt could return and play versus Wolves. Yeah, but they could play together, both Heaven and De Ligt. I think Yoro has been a bit shakier recently. Luke Shaw predominantly plays as a left centre-back, but of course United played a sort of different system in the first half. They played a back 4, they played very well too, but then they just sat deeper in the second and we saw the kind of United that we've seen all season, which is quite inconsistent. I think United have maybe underperformed and they should have scored more goals, to be fair, but yeah, under Amorim, we have seen real inconsistencies, and I think the back 3 isn't really supposed to be an ever-present thing. They should adapt sometimes and catch the opponent off guard like they did in the first half. But yeah, it's a good point you make. I think De Ligt has been United's best player this season since Game Week 1, essentially, and he would be a very big boost for that defense. Triple captain Eka TikTok, cry with me. At least you got something. I know it's not good. 5 points is not what you want from your triple captain, but yeah, it's a tough one to take. I know someone who did the exact same thing. I've been very consistent about this. You know, Game Week 17 is what I recommended to people. I personally went for Haaland in Game Week 6 and it went well, but yeah, I think if I had the triple captaincy, I probably would have gone for probably Ekitike, actually, in terms of Game Week 18 and 19 left. From those 2 windows, I look at Haaland against Forest or Sunderland. I think Ekitike against Wolves would have been my preference, to be fair. So I don't blame you for going for it. But yeah, when I talked about this in recent weeks, I always kind of bookmarked and highlighted Game Week 17 as my favourite of the remaining game weeks. So yeah, of course, that was already gone for you. And you might have had other chips to play as well. Everyone's situation is different, so it's hard to judge sometimes. Free hit this game week, we'll just keep Haaland, Ekitike, Cunha and Foden. We'll focus all the rest of the positions on Liverpool, Chelsea and United with a strong bench for any midweek rotations. Sounds like a solid plan, and I think with the free hit, well, of course, just a reminder to anybody watching, if you have any boosters left, use it now, because once the Game Week 19 deadline passes on the 30th of December, that's it. We enter the second half of the season and you can no longer use your chips from the first half of the campaign. I think it's a good idea to keep those players. They're all very solid in their own right, but I think some people would make a case for going for Cherki over Foden based on recent form, but that could easily switch the other way in the coming weeks. But I'd certainly go for Haaland, Ekitike and Cunha on the free hit, that's for sure. Play or bench Lewis Potter against Spurs. Other defenders are Van Dijk, Goodmanson, O'Reilly, Timber, Gabriel. Yeah, I'd go for the Arsenal defender, despite Villa being a top team right now. I'd start O'Reilly and probably Virgil van Dijk. Hello, bro. What a Verts guy. What a Verts guy? What a Verts performance and his first goal. Who is this Cunha guy? Well, to be fair, Cunha plays against the same team Verts scored against just now, so we'll see how Cunha does. But so far, it's a really good swing in favour of Verts owners, and I said this before, so I'm not going to change my tune. For Gameweek 18 specifically, I always preferred Verts over Cunha, even Declan Rice as well, but I just like Cunha for the next 4 or 5 game weeks, but I've got so many short-term problems and also fixes that I need something more sustainable and long-term, and that's why I'm in a precarious predicament at the moment. A bit of misfortune as well, you know, buying Timber for Hincapié, and now Timber's injured, so I might need to sell him as well, but I've also been very aggressive with my transfers, so yeah, FPL can be a funny game sometimes. I think Verts is showing good form in general. People pointed this out a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I was proven wrong about that, I believe. And also with Verts, if I was wildcarding now, for example, or had a stronger position with more transfers at my disposal, I'd be very keen on buying Florian Verts for the next couple of weeks. I don't want to see Rice at right back. I don't think any of us do, to be fair, but Ben White's injured. We'll see what happens with Timber, of course, but he landed awkwardly against Crystal Palace. He played very well, Declan Rice, and towards the end of the game, he makes an amazing run on the right, full of energy, and he just has that sort of second wind in him, and he's always able to just kind of dominate games with his physicality, and he's Arsenal's best player right now for sure, alongside Gabriel, and both of them will be crucial in the quest for the title. Please suggest a good mid for Potts replacement. But what are we talking about here? What price tag? Because I could just say Xhaka, even Reinders on his current form, Elliot Anderson, but your budget will ultimately determine the answer to this question. Bought in Keane for his 10 points and bench boost Dubravka for his 11 points as well. Yeah, that's very solid. I liked Everton defenders short term, to be fair. I thought it would be a 2-1 win for Everton. In the end, it's a goalless draw, so people who had both Dubravka and an Everton option defensively will be very happy with that result, and of course, that boded very well for you. Should I keep Cash on the bench during the suspension? Probably, but yeah, Cash, I'm not too surprised by what's happened. He's very inconsistent, and he can score against Arsenal, do well against Man City and keep a clean sheet, but then against West Ham and teams you expect Villa to beat and keep a clean sheet against, he doesn't deliver, and he's now suspended, of course, for Gameweek 19, but it also depends on your situation, so how many transfers you have at your disposal, what fires do you need to put out, maybe you've got Jurriën Timber, for example, but yeah, I think in a lot of situations, I'd keep Matty Cash for now, and Villa have good fixtures after Gameweek 19. I'm somehow above a guy who had Schade in my mini league. Well, he would have definitely cut the gap with that hat-trick there, but yeah, at least you're still above. That's what matters, but it is a long season. We've got to keep pushing. Thank you very much, Chris Parkey. As he says, smash the like. It'd be greatly appreciated. Subscribe to the channel. We are closing in on 38,000 on YouTube. Click the hype button on the YouTube app. There's also the share button, so you can just send this around to people who love UCL Fantasy and FPL. And there are many ways to interact with the channel. There's my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM. There's my FPL and FPL Challenge League, Spotify, and much more in the description. That includes Patreon, and you can become a patron by going to the website, patreon.com/FPLDylan, and click the join button on YouTube for early access to my videos and many other perks. I transferred in Verts for the captaincy. Very nice. I also have Schade in the midfield. Well, you're chasing, but that is a great duo to have. Verts captain and Kevin Schade. That's going to be a game changer. Saka to Cunha, not for me. As much as I like Cunha against Wolves at home, I would only sell Saka if you're then funding Ekitike up front or doing a move which essentially forces an upgrade elsewhere. I just don't think that Cunha is a better option than Saka long term. Are you bringing in Newcastle defence? If I was in a better position, yeah, I would probably bring in Chow, but if Timber's out, I think what I'm going to end up doing is Timber to Gabriel. Rice is a very safe pick, not fancy, but consistently on set pieces and hitting DEFCON regularly. Can't go wrong with him. Well, that's what I mean. He can also score the odd goal. He's a bonus points machine, many routes to points, and playing as a right back in centre mid as a DM, he's always finding a way to get points consistently. Rice is one of my only good picks this year. I don't think I've ever had Rice in FPL, and that's a mistake of mine, actually. Yeah, I'll go for the Timber news very quickly, but as covered earlier, he landed awkwardly. That's what Arteta said. Let's be real, Everton keeping clean sheets till Gameweek 22. We'll see, because under David Moyes, there has been a regression defensively, and they have scored more goals, been more expansive, but yeah, maybe in the last couple of weeks we've seen more of a revert to type for Everton, and it's more similar to what we saw under Sean Dyche, but yeah, things can change very quickly. I've said this multiple times, I like Michael Keane whilst Branthwaite's out injured. Tarkowski is decent, but I think Keane is the superior option because of value, and Jordan Pickford is always going to be up there for goalkeepers. I've bought Cunha for this game week, was going to go Gordon after. Think now with Timber out, I can't. Yeah, the main sort of fixture that I bought Cunha for was Wolves at home in Game Week 19, so we'll see how he does there. If he blanks, then I would be very, very concerned. O'Reilly and Saka to Cunha and Dalot for a hit, or Saka and Jimenez to Cunha and Bowen for a hit. I would go for the Cunha and Bowen transfers for a hit, but I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think it's worth selling Saka for a hit. Jimenez has scored in back-to-back games ever since I sold him. No surprises there, but I would have some reservations about that. And Jared Bowen, as good as he is, should have scored today, and West Ham are terrible. I had an unusually terrible start. Aggressive transfers and going against Haaland didn't help. Yeah, I didn't start with Haaland either, but maybe you bought him quite late on, and I think after a few game weeks it became clear that he was the go-to FPL option this season, but unfortunately, unlike previous campaigns, we had alternatives there. This season, we don't really when it comes to consistently challenging Haaland for the captaincy. Good to see you, Lautaro. Hola, Dylan. Saludos de Lautaro, Alicia, Horacio y Sandra desde Argentina. Gracias. Y sí, mucho amor y suerte para ustedes. 61, 2 to play, bench boost, and took a -8. Still doing well from DC. And bonus points. Oh, defensive contributions. For some reason, I was thinking of DCL, but there was no L there. Pretty nice. In fact, 61 is a great score. The bench boost has seemingly worked well for a lot of people, particularly those of Dubravka. That would have immediately kind of carried the bench boost this week. 49 points without bonus. 3 players left. So that could easily be 50 plus. Depends on who you have, but that looks really promising. Foden to Turkey for the extra money. I would only make that move if you have another transfer in mind, like Jimenez to Ekitike, as one prime example. Hi Dylan, Gabriel Magalhaes is ready to play 90 minutes. Maybe not yet, but with Arsenal's injury situation, let's say for example Timber is still injured, I could see the defensive line being Raya in goal, Rice right back, Saliba, Gabriel and Hincapié on the left, because both Lewis Skelly and Calafiori are doubtful, and it doesn't look good with Calafiori. I think Arteta seemed quite concerned about his injury. So yeah, I'm going to go through some different screens first. There's a lot of comments coming in actually. So I'll try my best to go through every single one of them. But first off, let's go for the FDR. So Newcastle are top until Game Week 24. Spurs, Everton, West Ham and United complete the top 5. And if we look near the bottom, we've got Bournemouth, who are winless in 9 matches, Leeds United, Fulham, Arsenal and Wolves. With predicted points for the same time frame, Erling Haaland, Cunha, Saka, Foden and Rice are the top 5, with Semenyo, Palmer, Ekitike, Gabriel and Nico O'Reilly. In terms of price changes, we could see Cunha, James, Rogers, Ekitike, Dalot, Chalobah, Cherki, Lewis Miley and Lewis Potter rise tonight. In terms of price falls, Danny Welbeck, Van Heck, Cucurella, De Ligt, Pedro, Udogi, McAtee and Norgard could go down. So these are the updates that people have been asking about with Mikel Arteta after the 2-1 victory over Brighton. So on Ricardo Calafiori, Arteta said it was something they felt yesterday, something very awkward that happened. Today in the warm-up, he wasn't comfortable. During Timber, on the other hand, he just landed awkwardly. That's all Arteta said. And he also gave an update on Lewis Skelly. I believe he gave an update on Lewis Skelly, right? Well, no. Essentially, Lewis Skelly was subbed off. He's not injured, to be fair. So Arsenal could still play him as a left-back and have Hincapié and Saliba in central defence, but it's only a matter of time until Gabriel starts for the Gunners, and they need to be very careful with him because Gabriel is so important in both boxes, and he will also improve the set-piece threat quite significantly. Let's now go to a stats comparison of Cunha and Florian Wirtz, but just bear in mind that these stats are taken before Gameweek 18, so you can't see Wirtz's goal in here, for example, and that will obviously help his argument and case against Matheus Cunha. But I think both of them are looking very solid for the next couple of weeks, and I'd rather buy Cunha at this moment in time, but I certainly understand why people went for Wirtz with that Wolves fixture in 18, and now it's Cunha's turn to face the same opponent at home, and he's now got 50 shots for the Premier League season. So the website I typically use when planning is fpl.team, and this is my provisional squad for Gameweek 19. Sanchez in goal against Bournemouth at home. Dubravka is my alternative against Newcastle. A back three of O'Reilly, Klein and Timber, who I might have to sell to Gabriel Magalhaes, but even Chow could be my next replacement, and I can always wait for the Arsenal defender. So buying Chow in for Timber, if he is ruled out, that could be my way forward. Foden, Wilson, Saka and Cunha, Ekitike, Haaland and Thiago. I'd probably captain Erling Haaland as things stand. I don't think Thiago's too shabby against Tottenham, by the way, and Saka is always decent. I think Cunha would be the main sort of appeal, facing Wolves at home, and some might even go for Ekitike once again. This could be the Gameweek where he ends up hauling, and he did score a brace against Leeds only a couple of weeks ago. On my bench, I'd have Anderson, Mati Cash, who's suspended, and Potts. So that would be the sort of structure. But I think this is another week where Haaland could be challenged, and I think Ekitike and Cunha are two of the standout captaincy options when it comes to matchday 19. So what about FPL Challenge? How did I do up until now? Not too shabby, 36 points. I've got Rufus in goal as my only player left. I went for Michael Keane as my only defender. Palmer and Saka, very different stories here. Saka got the assist, created a big chance, and delivered 11 points overall. But when the bonus points are added, he will get up to 13. So that is worth mentioning. I'm going to go up to 38 points. Ekitike, though, in FPL, he only got 5 points, but he created a big chance, so he got an additional 6 points, and that's 11 overall. And I captained Erling Haaland in FPL Challenge, so I jinxed him here, and that was good for FPL anyway, because that essentially prevented the red arrow for now. But tomorrow, I've only got one player left in Nathaniel Klein, so things could be very different after the Sunday matches. So these were my scoreline predictions. I'm just going to show you how horrible they were. So quite a few correct results, but not scorelines. I went for United 1, Newcastle 1. And by the way, after this, I'm going to delve into all the DEFCON and bonus points before going back to your questions. So Forest 0, City 2. Not too shabby, but not quite enough. Arsenal 1, Brighton 0. And then Brentford Bournemouth. I thought the Cherries would get a result, but they are just looking terrible at this moment in time. And Burnley Everton ended up goalless. Liverpool, it wasn't that comfortable for them. Only a 2-1 win over Wolves, but still a win nonetheless. And I got the wrong result in the Fulham-West Ham game. The Hammers are in deep, deep trouble, and they are flirting with relegation. Chelsea 1, Aston Villa 1 looked like a solid prediction, but Ollie Watkins made the difference with a brace off the bench. For tomorrow, I've gone for Sunderland 2, Leeds 0, and Crystal Palace 1, Tottenham 0. I would really like that, actually. And I think a Nathaniel Klein clean sheet would be very, very, well, beneficial and much needed, but I'm not as optimistic now with that prediction as I would have been a couple of days ago. So now let's go to the FPL website and check the bonus points and DEFCON. So for the Boxing Day Classic of Man United 1, Newcastle 0, the bonus points were awarded to Dorgu, Lamens, Martinez and Dallo. In terms of defensive contributions, Ugarte, Dallo, Lisandro Martinez, Dorgu and Heaven, they were the only players to secure DEFCON in that game. In the early kickoff between Forest and Man City, the bonus points went to Cherky, Hutchinson and Gavardio. And to be fair, Rangers is also going to share a bonus point with Gavardio there. When it comes to DEFCON, Elliot Anderson, Murillo, Milenkovic, Nico Gonzalez, Gavardio, Matheus Nunes and Ruben Diaz. Quite a few DEFCON from that match. And for the Arsenal game, the bonus points went to Odegaard, Saka and Gomez shared 2. And I think that would be it, actually. With DEFCON, no one from Arsenal got defensive contribution points, but for Brighton, the only player was actually Van Heck. In Brentford's 4-1 win against Bournemouth, Kevin Schade, unsurprisingly, got a free bonus points after scoring a hat-trick. Semenyo got 2 bonus points, which didn't help me at all when it came to the red arrow and also my quest to securing a green. And Scott was able to pick up 1 bonus point. With defensive contributions, Adja, Collins, Coyote, Yanel, Scott, Cook, and Senesi all got DEFCON. In the goalless draw between Burnley and Everton, Dubravka got maximum bonus, Keane got 2, so that's going to be a few extra points in FPL Challenge as well, and both Tarkowski and Ekdal share 1 bonus point. With defensive contributions, Laurent, Ekdal, Keane, Garner, Tarkowski, McNeil, and Irigbonum all secured defensive contributions. And Florian Wirtz was able to get maximum bonus points and produce a double-digit haul against Wolves. Gravenberch got 2 bonus points, and Curtis Jones secured 1. He also got DEFCON. The same goes for Gomez, Andre, and Mosquera. And for the final 2 matches, Fulham's 1-0 win against West Ham. Both Robinson and Jimenez will share 3 bonus points as things stand, and Cuenca gets 2 bonus. With defensive contributions, Magassa, Kilman, Cuenca, and that's it really. Those are the only players to get DEFCON. And for Aston Villa's 2-1 win over Chelsea, Ollie Watkins got maximum bonus points, Joao Pedro got 2, and Reece James picked up 1, despite getting booked and conceding as well. With defensive contributions, Caicedo, Tielemans, Buendia, and Konsa all secured defensive contribution points. And we've got 2 matches left tomorrow. We'll see how that pans out. But so far, all the DEFCON and bonus points have been covered for Gameweek 19. And this is my squad, how it looks like at the moment. And I'll also update the FPL Challenge score and go back to that in a couple of minutes' time. But essentially, instead of 36 points, I will have 40, with 2 bonus coming the way of Saka and Michael Keane. So that will be reflected as well. 40 points in FPL Challenge with Roofs left, and in FPL it's 42 points, and Nathaniel Klein is my only remaining player. So let's see if I can get this up quickly. So we'll go back to your questions in just a few seconds. Okay, so let's go back to your questions now for the remainder of this stream. Max says, help, I'm struggling. I have 612 overall points. I'm always going for the most popular options and going players against easy teams. Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to give your players time to breathe and don't keep on changing every single week and taking multiple hits, because if you exceed the transfer limit, you're going to be taking a -4 for every additional transfer you make beyond the quota of free transfers. And you can stack up to 5 available moves. You get 1 per week, but you've got to be very careful about that. And if you buy 1 player and then sell them the next week, and I've done that plenty of times in the past, it's just never going to end well, or very rarely will it kind of pay off, because you're essentially just chopping and changing for the sake of it and not giving players a chance to actually perform in your setup. My rival in the league bought in Grealish, not in the squad. According to the news, he spent 20,000 taking his mates to the strip club on Christmas. I saw a rumour like that, but I didn't pay much attention to it. But yeah, for him not to be in the squad was quite telling. Welcome here, Weslin. What's your opinion on Keane Lewis Potter playing out of position? As I mentioned after the Wolves game, very promising, and it's what I predicted after the absence of Dango Ouattara because of AFCON, but I still don't think Lewis Potter's literally worth the investment, or he's not worth rushing into, because Brentford aren't reliable defensively, and ultimately he kind of counteracts that with the attacking threat. But I'd rather prioritise Gabriel Munoz when he's back. You've also got Chow, who for me, long-term would be a better option than Lewis Potter, and Newcastle are more solid defensively. Everton attackers are awful, I agree. I think with their defenders, that's pretty much where you invest in. And earlier this season, I had Indai, who did very well for me at times, but yeah, with the other attackers, they are pretty poor. Fulham, not great numbers, but they keep getting damn clean sheets. Only recently, but you are right. I'm quite surprised by the recent clean sheet output, but yeah, I think long term, if I was wildcarding now, Anderson would be sold quite comfortably, and I think Keane is a superior option. Couldn't afford Ekatike without a -4, so I opted for Wirtz and captain him. Lucky me. Well, that's why sometimes it's good to find alternative routes. A lot of people push towards Ekatike this week. I bought him the week before, and it was Wirtz's time to get the big return. Still decent from Ekatike, but a bit disappointing in the grand scheme of things. I'll be honest, Juba, it's very difficult to tell. I don't know enough about the Timber injury. Essentially, all we know is that he landed awkwardly. So all we can do is guess at this point. I hope he's available against Villa. And if you're asking me now, I think he will be, but I couldn't guarantee it. I want to play free hit in Gameweek 19, so there is demand. Yeah, but has to be enough demand, if you know what I mean. Rice, I think he might have a small problem. I don't think it's a massive injury. He'll probably start against Villa, but he's been nursing a few pains and injuries over the last year or so, particularly over, I'd say, the past month or two. So that's why we saw him rested once or twice in the Premier League and in some other competitions, but I think Rice will play against Villa. What do you think about selling Semenyo at now to Rodgers, Gibbs-White, Neto? I just don't think it makes sense to sell Semenyo to Rodgers, who's facing Arsenal away. I mean, unless you're backing Villa to win or to score a few goals, which they could do, to be fair, but I just don't think the timing is great for that, and I think Semenyo is better than all of them. From Gameweek 20 onwards, that could change a little bit, and I'd lean towards Rodgers, but I don't think it's worth doing it right now. So yeah, with Aiden Heaven, I kind of covered him earlier. It's a good time to buy him on paper, but United also have key defenders who will return very soon, like De Ligt and Maguire, and they've only kept their second clean sheet of the season yesterday against Newcastle. So I'm not that bullish on them. Against Wolves, you'd probably back them to keep a clean sheet, but they also scored against Arsenal and Liverpool in recent weeks. 26 points all out, another disaster. Rest in peace, wildcard. Yeah, that's very disappointing, and after you wildcard, you always want to have that sort of security of immediate returns, so you're a bit more secure about your picks, but yeah, I think since playing the wildcard myself, I've only gotten red arrows, and it's a small sample size, but yeah, it can put you from a strong position to a sort of insecure one, and you don't want to get into that sort of situation. Bench one of Bruno Guimaraes, Keane, Raul Jimenez, and Timber. Difficult one, actually. I'd probably bench Timber this week. For some Mateta, not much has really changed. I talked about him in the recent Transfers podcast. I talked about selling him. So I think in some situations, for example, you have enough money to go to Ekatike, I would do it. Even Jarrod Bowen is a preference of mine, but I would back Mateta to score tomorrow, actually, against Tottenham, and that could change people's perceptions about him, but over the past 10 game weeks, he has 2 goals, essentially. He has been quite underwhelming. Generational stinker this week, 28 points all out. I can see why you feel that way. It's not a good score, and it's quite low scoring in general, but yeah, that can still sting quite a bit. Bench 2 says Mustafa, Gabriel, Van Dijk, Lewis Potter, O'Reilly, Goodmanson. I would bench Goodmanson and Lewis Potter. We go again next week. Exactly, that's all we can do. And next week could be much better, and it could end up sort of making up for the disappointments of this week, and that's the hope, of course. Raya, Timber, Chow, O'Reilly, Cunha, Foden, Rice, Semenyo, Ekatike, DCL, Haaland, with Dubravka on the bench, Van de Ven, Tavernier, Rodon. 0 transfers, 1.4 in the bank. So who did you buy going into Gameweek 19? That's what I'm wondering. Cunha, right? If so, that makes sense. Don't go Aiden Heaven. Maguire's back in training and could get subbed in if he gets like a yellow. Amrim always subs them off at halftime. Yeah, I think it's good advice to urge caution with Aiden Heaven. I don't really blame you with that. And you also mentioned De Ligt coming back fairly soon, and he has been United's best defender this season. Fofana to Gabriel, Raya to Sanchez. Yeah, I think overall that looks quite good. Fofana won't start most games for Chelsea. Sanchez will, and of course with Gabriel. There are some question marks about the Villa game. in terms of Arsenal keeping a clean sheet, of Gabriel starting, which I think he will. But yeah, I think that's a good point. I'd probably go for that, depending on the rest of your squad. You might have other fires to put out, but looks good. Vice captains are useless. There will be the odd occasion where it comes in handy, but it's still good to do it just in case. I see a lot of people just vice captain their goalkeeper, and when they actually need their vice captain to come through, they usually don't, especially when you vice captain a goalkeeper. So it's always good to have everything set up just in case and not leave any stone unturned. Thank you for answering my questions. I really appreciate your work. Thank you very much to you, Buju Man, and if you have any more, then be sure to let me know. Initially, I want to include Heaven, Cherky, and James in my wildcard. The best option of the three is probably Cherky. And to be fair, James has been very solid recently. I talked about this, but I think with Chelsea, the best time to invest in them defensively is probably Game Week 22, 23. Yeah, I wouldn't go for Heaven on the wildcard. With James, I'm open-minded, but I think Chow is better. Gabriel, O'Reilly, Van Dijk, and a few other defenders that I've mentioned recently. Do you think Timber's a sell this week? Well, it depends on how serious this injury is. I think he'll start against Villa as things stand, but we don't know much about the injury, just that he landed awkwardly. So just depends on the severity and the extent of it, but he will be needed against Aston Villa, especially against Morgan Rogers on the left-hand side. So I'd probably say hold Timber for now, but hopefully we get more clarity over the next day or so. Yeah, I talked about Calafiori a few minutes ago. Essentially, it was a weird injury. Something weird happened with Calafiori yesterday, and he felt discomfort today, so he didn't play whatsoever, and Lewis Kelly replaced him in the starting 11. What's your policy on taking -4, -8 hits? Yeah, good question. I used to take them for fun, essentially, and sometimes they went quite well. Other times, it was horrendous. But essentially, with -4s and -8s, I try to limit that to outfield players. I don't like making goalkeeper transfers, let alone for a hit. Even with defenders as well, if possible, I'd like to avoid taking those hits. And when you have players missing out entirely, and then you've got quite poor bench cover, in that sort of situation, a hit or two could be acceptable, right? But I just think the more hits you take, the more unlikely it is for the transfers to actually pay off. Now, you can also take a hit and then it pays off in the long term, not in the immediate. So there's always that argument as well. But there are many different layers that come into it. There's also the element of price chasing, which, to be honest, I wouldn't really factor in too much when making early transfers, but that can also help you build team value and be early with certain players like I was with Foden and Fernandes over the last couple of weeks, and that has put me in a decent position FPL-wise. But yeah, I think that's a good question, and ultimately it will be team dependent, and everyone's different. You might be a more aggressive manager than I am. I used to be very aggressive in FPL, and you could argue that recently I've been doing that and making too many transfers. Yep, that's been covered there, Punjabi. With Calafiori, I think he's more of a sell. I don't think he'll be available against Villa. I transferred out Raya for Rifs and got saved. Well, we'll see how Rifs does tomorrow, but he offers better value than Raya at the moment. Jubert says, hi Dylan, rate my team. 1.1 in the bank, 0 transfers. So did you make an early transfer as well? If that's the case, then yeah, I wouldn't be taking hits here, despite Timber potentially missing out against Villa. You've got Raya and Pickford. I think that's a lot of money invested in your goalkeepers. So I think in a couple of weeks' time, you could downgrade one of them to Dubravka, and that would be enough. Yeah, keep things as they are for now. You've got a lot of squad depth. Yeah, the only sort of like weak link is Guiu, but that allows you to have plenty of premiums and reliable options like Semenyo, Haaland, Thiago, Foden. But what I would recommend, yeah, I think selling one of your goalkeepers to Dubravka, and that gives you a lot of money in the bank actually, to then upgrade Guiu to a better forward. That's one example, but you might be tempted to do something like Foden to Saka, or Bruno Guimaraes up to... Oh, to be fair, you don't even need to... with the money you've got already, there are a lot of options for you to make some changes, but I'm looking at your team overall. Timber to Gabriel looks good. That could be your sort of immediate focus. And then over the coming weeks, I just don't really see a need to have two expensive goalkeepers like that. It's a lot of money in that position, and you're going to have a lot of bench points in the process. Bench boost of Dubravka and Keane, missed out on Timber, 60 points with Lefay and Mukiele to go. Yeah, solid bench boost, great score, and you've got 2 players left, so that could easily turn into 70. Had Grealish in on the free hit. Hopefully Goodmanson does fine next week. For some people, that's actually turned out to be a blessing, the fact that Grealish hasn't played whatsoever. I think Arthur, for example, had Semenyo coming off the bench. Rice is probably the best asset I didn't own all season until recently, just because he was a bit overpriced for a DM. Yeah, I get that. He's not maybe the most exciting of options, but he's consistent and dependable, and today he played as a right-back against Brighton. Gordon is sell long-term, but I'd definitely keep him against Burnley, but he's just not a reliable option. A bit like Cunha, you could argue, but I'd rather go for Cunha, which is why I bought him in the first place in Gameweek 18 over Gordon. But for Newcastle, the best midfielder is Bruno Guimaraes, which I've said consistently. Timber to Keane or Tarkowski. I prefer Keane, whilst Branthwaite's out injured, but I admit that it's more short-term because Tarkowski will remain in that Everton lineup, whilst Keane will drop out. Van Dijk clean sheet will surely be gone in the next 4. I still think Van Dijk will keep a clean sheet or 2 over the next 4, but I thought one of them would come against Wolves, and it didn't obviously suffice. It didn't end up happening. Of course, Arsenal can do it, but yeah, it's a bit of a bleak situation right now in terms of the matches recently, where against Palace and Brighton, Arsenal should have been 2-3-0 up. They didn't score from some gilt-edged opportunities, particularly in the first half of both games, and they're also looking a bit shakier defensively, particularly in the second half of matches, and we've seen them concede some late goals. Look, not using it as an excuse whatsoever, but it is very frustrating when you get Gabriel back from injury and then you get Timber and Calafiori both injured. So it's quite frustrating, and it always seems like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But Arsenal are still top of the Champions League, the Premier League, Carabao Cup semi-finals. They've done quite well, all things considered, but there's an element of nervousness, particularly with the attack, which hasn't really clicked in the last month or so. Thank you, Budgerman. Made 3 early transfers, Cucurella to Dallo, Saka to Cunha, Thiago to Ekitike. I like the Ekitike move. I'm not so sure about Dallo, and as much as I like Cunha, selling Saka does come with its disadvantages and problems potentially, but I see why you've done it, and I think United look better over the next couple of weeks compared to Chelsea, so I understand why you did Cucurella to Dallo, but I'm just a bit concerned about selling Saka, actually. Hi, Dylan Cunha captain. He's going to be up there in my top 5 for sure, but he's been very inconsistent this season. There is that sort of X factor, if you will, the fact he's facing his former club, and we saw him return against them a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, with Wolves, I've captained a few players against them recently. Ekitike 5 points, Thiago 2 points, so it hasn't always gone according to plan. Should I have Haaland, Cherkin, Foden, or Haaland, Cherkin, O'Reilly? I'd rather have 1 defender and 2 attackers, so the answer would be O'Reilly. Raven says 61 -4, so yeah, good score there. Bench boost. Lacroix, Enzo, Lefay still to play. Thanks to you. On the deadline stream, I asked whether to get Vertson and Everton defender for a -4, and it paid off. Well, it's paid off so far, and hopefully it continues long term. But I appreciate it, and hopefully you keep on getting green arrows and great scores like this one. I think 57 in a week like this is gold, to be quite honest with you. So all the best. You've got 2 players left, and a green arrow is definitely locked in for you. And you could even get 65 plus, which would be a great score to wrap up the week. 15 pointer, let's go. So Sky MUFC. Stop crying, you captain Ekitike, triple captain Haaland, and you got 2. Well, to be fair, I mean, not sure if you're referring to me or someone else, but I'm just saying it's a bit underwhelming. And it was an opportunity for non-Haaland captainers to actually be rewarded for going for something a bit different. And I just think in the last couple of weeks, I've targeted Wolves, which I think is a sound strategy. But with Igor Thiago a couple of weeks ago, that backfired massively. And yeah, Thiago has been a massive disappointment since I bought him in. Ekitike, though, not many complaints. I mean, he's still got something. It was a good assist for Florian Wirtz, but still a little bit disappointing. I'm not going to deny that. What's your goalkeeper preference? Yeah, I've been very consistent on this. Sanchez, Rufs, Raya, and Pickford. They're the 4 best goalkeepers in the game. I think right now you're probably looking at Rufs, but in most of my wildcard videos recently, I've talked about Sanchez, and I've had him all season. Hi, Dylan. Congrats on the green arrow. Thank you, Beardy, but I'll be honest, it is quite premature. So after Anderson comes on for Timber, I will be on a green arrow. But the problem is there are 2 matches left. And unless Klein gets a clean sheet, and even then it's looking a bit bleak, I'm not sure if the green arrow will be secured. But hopefully Palace can do a job tomorrow. Hey Dylan, would you get Gabriel or Cunha next game week? Depends on the context. Which player are you selling? Are you selling Timber to Gabriel? And who are you buying, or who are you selling to get Cunha? So we'll wait and see with that one. But Cunha looks better for this week against Wolves at home. Gabriel long-term is the best defender in the game. So just depends really what you're looking for. Long-term or short-term gains. But if I'm buying one this week, it's going to be Cunha. Cherkin for Wilson, I have money. I'm going to say yes. Semenyo to Cunha. I get the appeal. I bought Cunha myself. I'm not sure if I'd sell Semenyo though. As bad as Bournemouth have been, yes, their fixtures are quite tough. They're winless in 9 matches. But Semenyo is fixture proof, and he's scored in the last 3 matches essentially. I'd probably go for it, but I still like Semenyo. Rice still almost hit DEFCON. Yeah, not quite, but got the assist. Solid return. I would do Calafiori to Gabriel. So for what it's worth, and after covering the updates from Mikel Arteta, I think Timber will start, although that's not guaranteed, and I don't think Calafiori will feature against Aston Villa. Need a defender, as I want to sell Hincapié. Already have Van Dijk and O'Reilly as well as Alderete and Rodon. Yeah, I'd bring in Gabriel and just keep it simple. Now, for Game Week 19, we could see both Gabriel and Hincapié start. So it could be the Ecuadorian at left back, Gabriel Saliba, and Declan Rice as the back 4. Bought in Gabriel for Senesi. I think Gabriel is fixture proof and going double Arsenal defence until the end of the season. Yeah, looks solid. In terms of timing, I think you're probably looking at Game Week 20 as the best time to buy Gabriel, but he could still do something against Villa, either through DEFCON, a clean sheet, or a goal. There are many routes to points with Gabriel, and he's the best defender in the game, in my opinion. No, not transferring Klein out right now. I've got bigger fish to fry. During Timber could be the main priority, and there are other issues or potential avenues for me to improve my team. Do I get an extra free transfer from Game Week 19 if I free hit that week? No. So when you free hit a wild card, you will have the same number of transfers in the following week as you would have had before activating that booster. This is the first time I've ever had Rice. Shame he didn't get DEFCON. And it was against your team, so it must have felt a bit awkward. But yeah, Rice, very consistent, very solid, nothing spectacular or fancy, but he gets the job done. Yeah, the FPL was covered earlier, Wei saying. I'm so done with Petrovic, might use my transfer to get him out. I think so. Bournemouth have been shocking defensively all season. Winless in 9. Tough fixtures coming up. I don't like making goalkeeper transfers, but I think in this situation it's justified. I don't think Wilson's a season hold, but I don't think he's a sell, like some people suggest right now. I think at his price and below, he's one of the better options in the midfield. Palmer and Cherki versus Foden and Cherki. I'd still say Foden and Cherki for now, but I've said this quite consistently with City. It's Haaland, one of Cherki or Foden, and recently I've been talking about Foden. Now the tide might be shifting a little bit. And one defender, either O'Reilly or Gvardiol. I think that's pretty much the way I'd go about it. Best defender to buy for the long term, Gabriel. And if you want someone cheaper, Chow. So those are 2 good answers for you. Dylan Semenyo to Verts in Game Week 19. I already have Szoboszlai. I'd still keep Semenyo personally, but I get the appeal for Verts, and against Leeds we could see him do fairly well. Possibly Frankie. I might even incorporate it into my wildcard squad video. But if there is enough demand, then there could be a separate podcast with the free hit. I still want to do the team selection, the wildcard, and the transfer tips though. But yeah, if I have enough time, I'm open to doing an extra video and focusing on the free hit specifically. Top 30k right now with only Mukiele left. Great rank. Not sure what your score is this week, but Mukiele is a decent player to have tomorrow. What do you check for expected points? Fantasy Football Hub. Yeah. Cole Palmer, decent option, but I just think the minutes are still a big concern, and Chelsea's fixtures aren't great. I'd rather have Saka for the next couple, and you've got plenty of midfielders like Cunha, Semenyo, even Gordon short-term, Bruno Guimaraes, and all these other options I've talked about, Declan Rice, who are superior in terms of value and consistency. Of course, when Palmer gets going, that'll be a different story, but we're probably looking at January or February for that. Igor Jesus and Palmer for Wilson and Ekatike in 20? Not necessarily. I know Jesus got an assist today, but I wouldn't necessarily go for him. 49 points with 2 Sunderland defence to go. Also have Dubravka 11 points on the bench with Petrovic. He got a bloody -1. Well, good score though. Quite frustrating with the goalkeeper swing. I had something similar, albeit not as severe as what you had. And I think a clean sheet for Sunderland is possible. I've gone for 2-0 for the Black Cats tomorrow. We'll see how it pans out in the end. I actually got Haaland in 5 or 6. I tripled him for the first haul. So yeah, I did the same thing as you, to be honest. Then started going against him on the captaincy to make gains. Not worked out. Yeah, that can happen. I had something similar with Salah last season, and yeah, it just didn't go according to plan. Are Dorgu's minutes reliable over the next 3 or so fixtures? Yes, is the simple answer to your question, but once we get to February and Mazraoui's back, we've also got United having more key players return from injury. That could be a different story. There's also Amad Diallo who can play right wing back, then Dallo plays on the left, and Dorgu can be a bench player again. But yeah, for the next 3, I think he would be fairly safe. For the most part, he should start those matches, but things can happen. Robinson, maximum bonus points today. He has actually helped Fulham quite a lot with keeping a few clean sheets recently. I'm not so sure, though, if I would go for Robinson per se, particularly when they're facing Crystal Palace away next, who, to be fair, have been quite poor over the past couple of weeks, and Liverpool. So with Fulham, decent returns recently, but I wouldn't expect them to keep clean sheets over the next couple. Can't think of who to bench. Gay, Potter, Harry Wilson, Rice, or Foden. The one that stands out there is probably Declan Rice. The thing is, though, you've got Gay up against Harry Wilson and also Lewis Potter. So, interesting one there. I don't think it's a clear-cut answer, but what I'd probably do is bench one of Gay or Wilson, depending on your prediction for the Fulham Crystal Palace game. I think that's the way to go about it. But I've already talked about this in many other situations. I'm open to benching Declan Rice this week against Aston Villa. And long term, I still think he's one of the best midfielders in the game. Just the Parky says, I went Newcastle 2, United 2, Forest 0, City 2, Arsenal 2, Brighton 0, Brentford 2, Bournemouth 1, Burnley 1, Everton 2, Liverpool 4, Wolves 0, West Ham 1, Fulham 1, Chelsea 2, Villa 2, Sunderland 1, Leeds 1, and Palace 1, Spurs 0. So quite similar with the predictions, but yeah, I understand why you felt like some of these would happen, and with some of them you were more accurate than I was, particularly with the West Ham-Fulham game. Will Gay be transferred to Liverpool in January? I wouldn't rule it out completely, but I think it's more likely he leaves at the end of the season. HE01QS says, I have 60 on Fantasy and 79 on Challenge. Yeah, that is good. Very good scores, in fact, particularly for FPL. Frankie says, in hindsight, Cunha without Bruno Fernandes a smart choice? It's too early to say, in my opinion, and I'll be honest, I said this even yesterday, I didn't expect Cunha to return against Newcastle. If he blanks against Wolves, though, that would be a major concern and red flag. And that's where I would start to regret the decision a little bit, even though he was supposed to be a short to medium-term punt anyway. But, you know, I might as well have gone for Rice if I was going to replace Bruno Fernandes there. But I did mention the Bruno Fernandes factor, also no Brian Mbeumo, so the supply won't be as good for Cunha. They played very well in the first half, though. But in the second, United just defended, sat back, and Newcastle dominated and should have scored a goal or two. Forest played pretty well against City. I can see them keeping clean sheets in the next 5 games. Yeah, but I think a lot of teams also step up against the likes of City and Arsenal, right? And we see this with Villa, for example. They can keep clean sheets against City, but then against West Ham, they can see twice. But I get where you're coming from, and I think Forest could be fairly decent defensively over the next couple, but I'm not sure if I'd be investing, to be honest. Semenyo to Cunha, I'd still go for it, but Semenyo's more consistent. He's more reliable than Cunha, who is very hit and miss, and he can be hot and cold as well. My backline is Sanchez, Dubravka, Senesi, Timber, Anderson, Vandenberg, Mukiele, Wilson in the midfield. 2 free transfers, 2.6 in the bank. What do you recommend? Well, potentially Timber to Gabriel, and if you want to avoid Arsenal defenders for the next couple, then you could go for Chow instead and cover Newcastle against Burnley away. I'll be honest, looking at your, well, you're only mentioning your defensive line, really. I don't know your midfield except for Wilson, but I think Vandenberg is also a sell, potentially. And I'd probably recommend spending more money in your defensive line. So Mukiele's fine. If Timber's available, you can keep him, but the likes of Gabriel, Van Dijk, O'Reilly, Chow, they'd all be good acquisitions for your defense, even Keane as well. So maybe buy two of them for the likes of Vandenberg and potentially Timber if he's injured, but otherwise you might be looking at Senesi out or Joachim Andersen instead. Newcastle was surprisingly poor against the decimated United. We know they are not great away, and they also had won 4 out of the last 5 Premier League matches against Man United. But yeah, I was expecting a low-scoring game. I said 1-1, and Newcastle couldn't even deliver that. They were very toothless. Yeah, I've been asked about Cunha captain a lot. You'll see my top 10 Captaincy list in my team selection and the upcoming deadline stream. He will be in my top 5, but as I mentioned multiple times, he isn't a reliable choice. Only 3 goals and 1 assist in the Premier League this season, and I think he can do very well against Wolves because of how poor they are. There's also the X factor, if you will, with Cunha facing his former club, but I don't think he's a standout. Like, with Ekitike, I was a bit more bullish on him, and I think over the past couple of weeks I have been burned a little bit by captaining a player against Wolves at home. Maybe not so much now, and I gained a few points over Haaland, but a few weeks ago I lost out on like 10 points by captaining Thiago against Wolves away it was, compared to Haaland, who scored a brace against Crystal Palace, and then Saka got some good returns as well. Best defender to buy for the long term? Yeah, covered this question. Gabriel's my answer. Should I get rid of Van Dijk and Palmer? Not necessarily. I'd keep Van Dijk. To be honest, I'd probably keep both of them, but I understand why you're thinking of this. Anderson to Rice or Hincapié to Gabriel? Anderson to Rice. But I think Hincapié to Gabriel, I'd try to make that happen in a couple of weeks' time. But my prediction is for both of them to start in Gameweek 19 with Hincapié as the left back. Hey guys, finished on 59 points and 14k. Happy with that for now. Thoughts on Liverpool triple up with Szoboszlai. Will later move to Cherki in 23. Already own Wirtz and Ekitike. Well, Liverpool have promising fixtures coming up. Szoboszlai is now back from suspension. He could be on penalties in the absence of Salah. And yeah, great rank. Solid score as well for Gameweek 18. I think short-term, the Liverpool triple-up makes sense, but I would have reservations about it going into February and beyond. Sell Semenyo or Wirtz? Thinking Gordon or Szoboszlai. I'll be honest, you don't need to sell either, but if I had to pick one, it's going to be Semenyo out. And yeah, with Szoboszlai, only 2 goals, 1 assist this season, but he can get DEFCON and bonus points. Gordon has also been very inconsistent. I mean, Szoboszlai's been consistent, don't get me wrong, but I just think in terms of output, Gordon, kind of similar with the numbers. Burnley away looks promising, but I just think Gordon is going to be very hot and cold. He'll give you a big return, 10 plus points, and then blank 4 or 5 games in a row. So at the moment, I'd lean towards Szoboszlai, actually. Bought Cunha for Bruno Fernandes and Ekitike and Rice for Thiago and Saka the week before for a -4. Not bad transfers on paper at all, and they could still work out long term, but as I talked about before with you, Thiago and Saka against Ekitike Rice, there's not much in it. It can always go one way or the other. Bowen or Voltemada? Still Bowen for me, but there's not much in it. I covered your question, Heroic. Thank you very much. Best 4.4 million or below defender for the long haul? Konsa, Fofana, Dalot. Not a big fan of any of them, but it's probably going to be Dalot right now. I think Palmer will be in my top 10 captains against Bournemouth, who are winless in 9 matches, and I think Chelsea will get the win here, but Palmer has been very inconsistent this season. Should I do Wilson or Semenyo to Cunha? If money is no issue, I'd sell Wilson instead, but I still like him as an option. Austin Kumar says, my team, should I roll for Gameweek 19 or transfer? So 0.8 in the bank, 1 available move. I'd probably roll, yeah. Jose Ferreira says, rate my team. Probably a 7 out of 10, but you've got Timber, who's a potential injury doubt. He landed awkwardly against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup, so he didn't play today. You could sell him to Gabriel, or because you've got Raya in goal already, maybe go to Chow and have a long-term solid defender who gives you more money in the bank to make other moves. Apart from that, I don't really see anything else that is a priority sell right now. Why like Saka, 10 million and not delivering accordingly? Yeah, but Saka outscored Rice this week, and over the past month, Saka's been very consistent if you look at the returns. Yes, I think over the course of the season, Rice offers better value, but I still think Saka, in a week like this, he's got more points, he's getting 7 overall, and he's even getting DEFCON from time to time, although not as consistently as Declan Rice. But look, I think with Saka, he has not reached the same standards as he did at this point last year, where he had 10 assists, and he was on course of breaking the all-time record for most assists in a single season. But both Saka and Rice will be up there for midfielders. Rice offers better value, no denying that. But I think asking why do you like Saka is a bit... I don't really get the question because he is consistent. And I think this season we're not seeing many premiums offer that consistency. While Saka isn't doing anything extraordinary, he's quietly ticking along and doing a decent job. Is it good enough for 10 million? Probably not, but look at Cole Palmer, for example. And you've also got Salah, who's been awful this season. And of course, we'll see how he does when he returns from AFCON. But apart from Haaland, we're not seeing any premiums really step up on a consistent basis. Who's the priority sell? Timber, Vandenberg, Semenyo, or Wirtz? Well, I think the worst option is Vandenberg. But if Timber's injured, and I've covered this already a lot, I can't really tell you for sure if Timber's going to play. I think he will start against Villa as things stand because Arteta said he landed awkwardly. So if you take his words at face value, then there's a chance he plays against Villa, and he was only rested and kind of saved as a precaution against Brighton, but I couldn't tell you for sure. And if we get clarity over the next day or so and Timber's out against Villa, I'd say he's the priority sell. But out of those 4 players, I think Vandenberg is the worst one. Rate my team says Cole Palmer, or Cole Pamer. Raya, Dubravka, Tarkowski, O'Reilly, Anderson, Van Heck, Rodon, Cunha, Wirtz, Saka, Wilson, Foden, Ekitike, Haaland, and Guiu. Yeah, I get why people have Guiu. It makes sense, and it gives you a lot of money to have a few premiums and more reliable options. I think the worst part about your team is your defensive line. So I will try to improve the likes of Rodon and Van Heck if you can. And I showed the prices earlier, the potential changes, and Van Heck could go down tonight. But yeah, Anderson as well, long-term, not a big fan of him. I think Everton defensively is fine. I prefer Keane over Tarkowski, but that's not really going to be a massive upgrade personally. And long-term, Tarkowski stays in the team. Keane won't because Branthwaite is first choice. So I would focus on Rodon and Van Heck, selling those two. But I don't know what money you've got in the bank, which makes it difficult for me to suggest replacements. But you could look at Chow, for example, over Van Heck, and Mukiele over Rodon if you have the funds. I might have to move my Petrovic transfer for later and start Dubravka because I have both Timber and Calafiori out. So just to reaffirm this, both players are not officially ruled out, but in my opinion, Calafiori will not play against Villa, and I think Timber will start. So I think the best thing to do is sell one of them, and that's where you can go to Gabriel, Chow, and all these defenders I've talked about in this stream. I have 0.2 in the bank, so could do Timber to Magalhaes. What are you saying, Dylan? Yeah, it's an awkward situation. I think Gabriel's the best Arsenal defender long-term. Timber would be second, but out of the 2 defenders you've got, I think Calafiori is less likely to play based on Arteta's comments, which, to be fair, you can't always take at face value. And that's why I sold Hincapié and bought in Timber. And then guess what? Hincapié starts, Timber doesn't. So I get why people are still asking about this situation. But yeah, my current gut feeling is that Timber starts, Calafiori doesn't. Would you start Mukiele against Man City at home, or Rodon against Liverpool away, or sell Matty Cash? Yeah, I'd sell Cash to Chow and start him. That'd be my advice. Yeah, not too bad, Sydney. I'm just about on a green arrow. I think I'm 0 points. Basically, I'm at my safety score. I've only got Klein left tomorrow, so unless he keeps a clean sheet, it could be a red, but probably a small one in the end. Do we know if there are press conferences before the next deadline? Hashtag Timber. Well, Arteta gave a press conference already, and the rest of his quotes will be embargoed, and they should be released in a couple of days' time. But I don't know the exact dates for when those embargo quotes will be up. Probably on the 29th or 30th of December. But yeah, we will get press conferences before the deadline. We've still got 2 matches tomorrow. We'll see what the managers say about any respective injuries there. But the answer to your question is yes. The thing is, though, a lot of the quotes you're going to see will be sort of out of date, essentially. So we're going to get information on the 29th or 30th from the 26th and 27th of December, if you catch my drift. People say they like Cunha as an FPL pick because he is selfish, but the fact he hasn't been returning this season, despite being this selfish, is concerning. I get that, and I'll be honest, with Cunha, the main reason why I bought him was the upcoming fixtures. Facing Wolves at home would be the main one, and I also see him as the talismanic figure for United now in the absence of Fernandes and Mbeumo, but as I covered over the past week, there's also the element of United having less creativity and supply to Matheus Cunha. And long term, I've always said this, Rice is the best replacement for Fernandes, and I think that's going to be the most consistent option. So that's probably what I should have gone for. But if Cunha returns against Wolves, I won't be that regretful. Hola Dylan, hope you're having a fantastic holiday, belated Christmas wishes, and have a great new year. Thank you very much to you, Bose. The same goes to you, and enjoy your time with your family and loved ones. Thank you very much for the kind words, and have a great 2026 as well. Why is Chow in conversation? Newcastle have kept only 2 clean sheets all season. I get they have good fixtures coming up, but seems more like a pun on anything. Newcastle have kept more than 2 clean sheets. And in fact, in terms of XGC, they're only second behind Arsenal. But yeah, let's get up the clean sheet stats. I think the teams with the least clean sheets this season are Wolves with 0, West Ham have 1, and I think United have 2 now. There might be 1 or 2 other clubs with 2 clean sheets, but let me have a look at this, because, yeah. Okay, so if we look at clean sheets... What is happening here? Yeah, club. Okay, it should be here. Let's go to clean sheets. Okay, so Arsenal have 9 clean sheets this season. Chelsea and Man City have 8. Crystal Palace, Everton, both have 7. Sunderland have 6. Bournemouth have 5. The same goes for Aston Villa, Tottenham, Fulham. And what about the rest? Let's go. So Newcastle have 5 clean sheets. They are joint 7th in terms of the Premier League stats alongside Liverpool. But yeah, Chow didn't start at the beginning of the season when Newcastle were looking quite solid defensively. But he has performed very well individually, in my opinion. And I just think Newcastle have great long-term fixtures, and they will keep a few clean sheets, in my opinion, over the next month or two. But yeah, if you look at the individual stats for certain players for Newcastle, that's why you're going to see only 2 clean sheets instead of 5. But yeah, Newcastle, in terms of the underlying defensive numbers, are only second behind Arsenal in terms of XGC, expected goals conceded. No, as I mentioned before, mate, I wouldn't sell Semenyo for Rodgers, Gibbs White, Gordon, Wilson, or Pedro Neto. Also, next question, any news why Vandenberg did not play today? I didn't see the quote or the reason why Vandenberg didn't play, to be honest with you, but I'm just not a big fan of Brentford defensively anyway. But let's get the quote up. So yeah, we did get an update, and Keith Andrews said on Vandenberg, he picked up a knock and wasn't right for today. Chris Adja has played really well in recent weeks and months. He'll come in. So yeah, that was the quote on Vandenberg. And people asked me about selling him or Timber, and I said for me he's the worst option in that scenario. I'd sell him if possible, but of course Timber is more expensive and it gives you more options to kind of go for more expensive defenders like Gabriel Magalhaes. Saka's been really unfortunate not to score in recent matches. To a certain extent, yes. I think his finishing has also been a bit lackluster, but he has produced some good returns, and it arguably could have been more. That includes the Brighton-Everton games, and of course he blanked against Everton, but yeah, I think you are right to a certain extent. Hi Dylan, have Raya, Dubravka, Timber, Van Dijk, Vandenberg, Richards, Anderson, Elliot Anderson, Minter, Saka, Foden, Potts, Haaland, Ekitike, Giu. Should I take a -4 with 1 free transfer? But what are you doing with that 1 free transfer? So -4 or -8? Yeah, once again, I just don't know what transfers you're looking to make there. But I think Vandenberg is the worst option you've got. I'd sell him. Wait with Timber. I personally think he'll start. And I think with the rest, you can kind of work with it for now. But I'd bolster your defensive line. just in case, because Richards as well, I think he'll be available against Fulham at home, and there is still a chance he plays tomorrow against Tottenham, but I think that won't happen. But I'd sell Van den Berg personally. You've got 2.8 in the bank. You can go to Chow, Gabriel, and all these defenders I've covered today. Is an Arsenal defender a must-have if you plan to keep Raya? No. I like the Arsenal defensive double-up, but it's not necessary. We saw them concede today. In recent weeks as well, they've been a bit shakier, conceding last-minute goals. And I don't think they have the same aura and also solidity defensively. I think that will change a bit with Gabriel coming back. And once other key defenders return and certain players can get a bit of a rest and they can rotate healthily and keep players fit, Arsenal will keep the most clean sheets this season and be the best defence. The underlying numbers suggest this. Also, their clean sheet output also does, but there has been a drop-off recently. So I think one is enough. You've got Raya. You don't need a defender right now. Is Saka sell to Palmer in 22? If Palmer can maintain the minutes, stay fit, and show some signs, then yes, but I haven't seen enough from Palmer yet, despite a few goals recently and returns, an assist against Newcastle. He scored against Everton, but I still need to see more from him. I would consider having both, but that would also prevent you from having Ekitike potentially, and it might also require you to have only one premium defender, maybe even none at all, which I don't necessarily recommend. But I think it's probably better to have one over the other, instead of having both, I should say. And at the moment, Saka is better than Palmer, but that could change by Gameweek 22, as you rightfully point out. I'm having a blast of a Gameweek. My two teams are both smashing at the moment. Nicely done, Sydney. My main Haaland team is Sharda. Yeah, that was going to do the trick. And my two transfers were Wirtz and Ekitike, the latter of whom I captained. I'm on 58 points with Mukiele and Goodmanson to go. Yeah, that's very good stuff. And I'll be honest, I've never had two teams. I've managed a family member's team, but that's it. I've never had two teams myself. But yeah, at least you're doing well with both of them. And it shows you can achieve good results with different routes. And one of them, of course, has Haaland. The other one has no Erling Haaland, which can be quite tough this season. I covered your question here about starting Mukiele against Man City. My advice is to sell cash to Chow. The thing is, Calafiori is cheaper. I know that. I understood what you said, but that's what I mean. It's not an easy situation. That's why it might be better to do Calafiori to Chow, for example, but that's just my opinion. Got 1.2 in the bank, was looking at Hall, but Van Heck's got West Ham and Burnley in the next two. I think the best Newcastle defender is Chow because of DEFCON. Until Dan Burn comes back, then he's probably the best one. And we've seen that in UCL Fantasy and FPL this season. But yeah, Van Heck, he's obviously back in the squad. West Ham and Burnley up next look decent, so I get that. Rate my team. 2 free transfer, 0.1 to spend, says Eddie Casey. Yeah, I'd probably say 8, but Grealish is the weak link. I'd sell him. Yeah, 7 or 8. Of course, Timber could change that a little bit because his availability for Gameweek 19 is in doubt. I think he'll start, but I can't guarantee it. But I'd sell Grealish for sure. Start Matheus Nunes against Sunderland or Gay against Fulham. I'd lean towards Gay. Time to bring in Watkins? No. I'd still rather have Ekitike. Just because Watkins scored a brace off the bench and he does well against Arsenal historically, I wouldn't bring him in. I've got Haaland, Wilson, Saka, Foden, Hincapié, Palmer, Van Dijk, Van den Berg, Anderson, Raya, Dubravka, Yoro, Mark Guiu, Krupi Jr. I think the worst parts about your team, or the worst players, would be Van den Berg and Yoro. I'd sell both of them. And to be honest with you, you've got two budget attackers in Mark Guiu and Krupi Jr. I'd sell one of them and upgrade that position to at least an Igor Thiago, Calvert-Lewin, Raul Jimenez, all these forwards I've talked about, even Jared Bowen, but I'd definitely improve that forward line. That's the weakest part of your team. And I'd also consider selling at least one of those defenders I talked about, mainly Van den Berg. But I understand why you have this structure, because it allows you to have Saka, Palmer, and Foden, which is something a bit different, but I'm a bit conflicted about that. Sell Anderson or Wilson to Gordon. It depends who you sell Anderson for, but I'd probably sell Anderson in this case. Newcastle numbers good, but can't keep a clean sheet. Fulham the opposite. That is true. Cunha or Haaland captain? As things stand, I lean towards Cunha, but not by much. And to be honest with you, the way City are playing, even though, to be fair, today they didn't play great, but I just think the run they're on, I'd back them to beat Sunderland. And it's tough to back against Haaland in most situations. So I think the most likely scenario is that I'll end up captaining Haaland. But yeah, there is a chance once again to go against them for the captaincy. We saw it this week, although Ekitike wasn't as, let's say, promising or not as rewarding as we maybe thought. With the Haaland blank, we thought maybe we could get a big rank rise from it. It wasn't the case, but Haaland blanked, and it shows that he's human. He's going to make mistakes, and he's not going to be infallible all the time. He's going to have these sort of blank periods and frustrations for those that captain him as well. But yeah, I think Cunha and possibly Ekitike will be the main standouts to go against Haaland. The problem is with Cunha, he's not that reliable. Thank you, Jose Ferreira. Thanks for your insights, Dylan. I watch all your videos. Very good analysis. Congrats from Portugal. Very kind of you, Jose. I appreciate that. Have a happy Christmas and a happy new year. Fake news was looking at Chow's total clean sheets instead of Newcastle's. No worries. I checked just in case to give you the full stats because I'll be honest, I thought Newcastle would have more clean sheets by now. But they have dropped off recently. They've really struggled to keep those clean sheets in recent matches. I didn't cook. I got 14 points with 3 players left. Yeah, that's a terrible score, but hopefully the 3 players left can really boost you up and you can get at least 30 plus points. My non-Haaland wildcard team is on 69 with Alderete to go. Had some lucky bench jam, Dallo for Calafiori. Very fortunate indeed, but that's what the bench is for, right? I'm on wildcard 19. Would you go Gabriel and Timber, or is it a risk too far? Well, Timber is a doubt now. He didn't play a single minute against Brighton. He landed awkwardly against Palace a few days ago. But I'd probably just go for Gabriel, to be honest with you. Long ass day, says Caleb Jordan. That is true. Number 1 in my mini league, but feels like a nice pick, says Thomas. I like Sunderland's defense as well. Don't have the stats, but feels pretty solid. Yeah, I get that. And if you have Roofs in goal, that's fine. High scoring goalkeeper in the game. Then you've got Mukiele, Alderete. They offer good value, so I get that. But I wouldn't double up. I'm for once not winning my mini league and far adrift. But it's still surmountable. We're in December. Yes, we're approaching 2026, but we've still got half the season to go. Bruno makes it look easy for Cunha. The crosses and assists he delivers. And to be fair, even with Bruno, Cunha only had 3 goals and 1 assist this season, but a lot of them came recently. Just moved Timber to Gabriel. I get that. I personally think Timber will start, but of course the alarm bells are ringing and Arsenal just can't keep their players fit. Is it worth doubling up with Everton defenders considering they have a favourable run of fixtures coming up? I think one's enough, but ultimately, we've seen this with Arsenal time after time again. The way you make big gains is if you double up on the defence and they keep clean sheets. And I think you're right to point out Everton, in the short term at least. So Keane and Tarkowski look promising. Maybe Jordan Pickford in goal, but I wouldn't go for Jacob Brown or Mikalenko. I think you either go for a centre-back or Pickford. And honestly, I think the only defence worth covering excessively, let's say, is Arsenal with a double up, but not against Aston Villa at home next. Scott says, fit or not, he's gone. Fair enough. Hey Dylan, I saved my free hit so I can play it now. I'll try to. A few people have asked me about that, but it would only be kind of rough and provisional. It's probably worth waiting for a free hit draft in either a best wildcard squad video or if people want to see it in a separate podcast dedicated to the free hit. Thank you for the super chat, Mauro. 3.3k, great rank, and also a solid score, 57 points. Bench boost, 3 left to play. Which 2 to bench in 19? Between Klein, Gay, Anderson, Chow, and Mukiele. And also Wilson, Semenyo, Cunha, Cherky, Foden, Ekitike, Bowen. I'd bench Klein and Mukiele. I'd bench those 2. I think that's the way to go about it, Mauro. Let me know what you think, but you're in a great position. Solid score as well for the week, and yeah, the Green Arrow is secured. Well, Andrew, I talked about this recently, so Sells just came back from an injury, and that's now 2 consecutive games where John has started while Sells is available, and John has played very well. In fact, today he made some great saves too. So I think for now, short term, yes, Sells has lost his place, but I'd back him to reclaim his spot in January. Long term, the best Newcastle midfielder is Bruno Guimaraes. Yeah, no need to spam the chat, mate. That's just not on. I don't know what you're doing. User says, have both Hincapié and Timber. Who's the priority sell this week? Well, Hincapié is available. Timber is the bigger doubt, right? But long term, Timber will start consistently at right back. Hincapié won't. He will be a fringe player, rotation, and filling at centre-back and left-back when needed. So long-term, I'd rather keep Timber, but it's worth waiting for updates, and we might not get them before the Gameweek 19 deadline. Let me just deal with the spammer, and then after that, I'm just going to go for a few more questions. I have been going live for the past couple of hours. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate it, and thank you to Stepaki for being very quick to the scene. I very, very much appreciate that. So let's get the stream to over 100 likes. It costs nothing. It boosts us up in the algorithm. I provided a lot of information in the stream, injury updates, top 10 captains. I mean, not actually top 10 captains. That'll be safe for the deadline stream and the team selection. But yeah, you have seen predicted points. People asking about the best free hit squad. I'll try to do that now as well. Start Tarkovsky or Van Heck this game week? Good question. I would go for... Very tough. Probably Tarkovsky. Hincapié or Van Dijk to Gabriel? At the moment, I'd rather sell Hincapié. Should I go for Cunha -4? Have Saka, Wilson, Wirtz, Rodgers, Foden? Not necessarily. I'd just keep what you've got. I agree with Scott. I'd go for Tarkovsky too. What are good differentials to have? Florian Wirtz, short term anyway. But Jarrod Bowen is still one of them up front, although West Ham are that poor that even Bowen has looked a bit frustrating this season. Let me just refresh the page and you can see the bonus points being added. So Saka's got 7 points. And if we go to FPL Challenge as well, we can also see the updated points here too. So I've got 40 in FPL Challenge. So Saka will get 13 in this game and Keane gets 10. A very solid return there. But yeah, in terms of differentials, I think Keane's another one. I talked about him over the past couple of weeks, but I'll be honest, I think this Burnley game will be his best return. And I don't see that necessarily translating against Forest, but maybe I'll be proven wrong about that. In the midfield with differentials, they're a bit harder to come by potentially, but Pedro Neto looks good long term. And I think Bruno Guimaraes is still my favourite Newcastle midfielder, to be honest with you. Do Calafiori to Saliba? Well, I don't think Calafiori will start. And if I'm proven right about that, then it won't be a sideways move, even though it feels like it, if they're both available. I'd rather go to Gabriel. He's the best Arsenal defender long term. I have to use free hit last week, but feel like I'm going to miss out on a lot of value with my team value already terribly annoying. Yeah, if anyone with chips remaining, this is the last week to use it for the first half of the season. Then it resets and we enter the second half of the campaign. So make sure to use your remaining booster. And ideally you have used all but one, so you don't have anything burnt. I might transfer out Vandenberg and Minter to Cunha and Chow or Hall, Heaven, Dallo. I'd go to Chow, personally. As for your other transfer, Minter to Cunha, looks solid. Sell Wilson or Anderson, Forest to Gordon, I meant. There's not much in it, to be fair. Wilson has a higher ceiling. Anderson is arguably more consistent, or at least offers you 3-4 points most weeks because of DEFCON. I'd probably keep Wilson if possible. Who to sell, Rice or Saka for Gabriel? Not ideal. I think Saka will score more points over the next couple than Rice, but there's a big difference in price there. And going for Rice, for example, allows you to then go for maybe Foden, Ekitike, and that makes the difference. Sometimes spending more money doesn't actually result in more points, of course. We've seen this a lot of times this season, but long term, I think Rice is better than Saka in terms of value. So I'd rather sell Saka, reluctantly. What should I do with Semenyo and Minter? I'd rather sell Minter from the two, but he looked really promising against Arsenal today. So if there's one player that's got low ownership, that has good fixtures coming up, who could really start producing an FPL again, I think Minter's one of them. So there is a risk there of selling him now against West Ham and some of the upcoming fixtures there for Brighton and Hove Albion. So I'll be honest with you, I'd keep what you've got. I know Gordon's facing Burnley away next, but I think Semenyo and Minter, especially Semenyo, he's a better option than Gordon. And with Minter, I saw promising signs from him off the bench against Arsenal. Would you go Raya and Arsenal defenders, 2 defenders, or just 1 Arsenal at the back? I'd just go for 1 Arsenal defender right now. Some went free and has not gone well. Not recently, but in October, of course, we saw some fantastic returns, of course, and no goals conceded in all competitions, but they went from that extreme to looking a bit ordinary at the back now. Mara says, yeah, same thought. Also probably Wilson for a 3-4-3. Yeah, I think so too. If I go back to your other question, though. So yeah, you need to bench one of the midfielders or forwards. I'll be honest. Wait, you have got Haaland as well, right? I'm guessing you've got Haaland. Yeah, I'd probably bench Wilson and go for a 3-4-3. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Let me know, though, if you got Haaland or not and what the situation is, but that's the way I look at it. Well, to be honest, MVP, we've heard about Branthwaite returning for a few weeks now. He's been on the grass, but he has suffered setbacks, and that's why Keane continues to play, and he's doing a really good job. So I think with Branthwaite, we're looking at January to February for his return. But in the short term, I think Michael Keane will be one of the standout defenders at 4.7 or below. John had been playing very well. Sells can't get back in at the moment. Agreed. That's why, unless John has a bad performance and Sells does really well in training, I think it is John's spot to lose right now. But that can obviously change. Thank you, Nighthawk. Merry Christmas to you as well. It's worth going for a United defender like Dorgu, for example. The timing is good, facing Wolves at home next, but they also were a bit of a party pooper against Arsenal and Liverpool, scoring against both of them. So I think it is worth going for a United defender, but they've only got 2 clean sheets all season, and I still prefer Newcastle, Everton defensively, definitely Arsenal, Crystal Palace, Man City, Chelsea. These are the teams I'd be focusing on, despite United having that plum fixture on paper coming up next. Yeah, that was covered already, mate. Thank you very much. Tim PWN says, cheers, Dylan. Commendable of you to go through all the questions. Wish you happy holidays. Thank you very much. The same goes to you. Enjoy the Merry Christmas celebrations. I don't know why I said it like that. And also the New Year, which is only a few days away. What should I do with Semenyo and Minter? That's been covered, thank you. Shada, Gvardiol, Semenyo saved my game week. 76 points is incredible. And you've got 2 left to play. Yeah, 80 plus is on the cards for you. If you could transfer out only one of these players, who would it be? Semenyo, Timber, or Vandenberg? For context, I have 0.9 in the bank, and my original plan was to sell Semenyo for Cunha. I would sell Vandenberg, honestly. And that's where you can go for Keane, Chow, and these defenders I talked about. I think it's a massive upgrade. Even if it doesn't pay off this week, I think long-term it will. So that would be my answer. I would start Tarkowski over Van de Ven. I agree. Everton prioritise defence. We don't. They are a bit more solid. I don't think Everton keep a clean sheet against Forest, but then again, I said that this week and we all know what happened. But I understand why people had that feeling against Burnley away. It was a goalless draw in the end, and their attack is horrible. Okay, so let's go to FPL.team, since I've gotten a lot of questions about this, and we'll try to build a sort of rough free hit team. But yeah, it's going to be very rough. Don't expect anything fantastic, and that's why it's better to wait for some of the videos when it comes to wildcard and free hit squads, where I've got more time to think about these things and give you thorough analysis. So let's put the free hit here. What the blood clot is this? Get out of here. All right, so let's go to this one, and let's go to free hit activated. Okay. I'd keep Ekitike and Haaland, although Haaland captain is not entirely secure. I'd go for Cunha, and here, a United option like Dalot, Dorgu, maybe De Ligt if he's back. I think that would be pretty decent, but yeah, I'd probably go for Dalot still, despite Dorgu being the standout against Newcastle. Okay, so I don't mind Thiago against Tottenham, which might be an unpopular opinion, but that's the way I feel. I think Foden against Sunderland, not a bad one to be fair. I wouldn't be surprised if he hauled. But let's go for Palmer against Bournemouth. I'm also going to get rid of Wilson. Let's also cheap out the bench. So here I can go for Ekdal. Maybe one decent bench option would be preferable. So that's where Keane could come in. Yeah, that looks decent. Maybe I'll cheap this out a little bit more. O'Reilly against Sunderland away. Not a big fan. Robert Sanchez. That's where Raya, Pickford could come into play. Lamens to double up on that United defence, which isn't great. But I'm going to go for something like this. And let's see where it takes us. I'm going to go for Virgil van Dijk again. I don't learn my lesson here. And to replace Klein... Okay, this would be probably the foundation of this defence. Not too shabby. I think maybe Saka out. And that's where Foden can come in. And to be fair, I did buy him at a much cheaper price than this. Foden sell price? Yeah, Foden in price. I got him for like... Nah, I got him for like way cheaper than that. When did I get Foden? He was like 8.3, 8.4 million. I don't know. Whatever. I'll deal with that later, but yeah, I bought him quite early on. Harry Wilson I'm going to get rid of. That's where Verts could come into play as well. I'd be 0.1 million off this squad, but that looks decent. It's like a rough team, and as I mentioned before, there is still room for improvement here. But I like the look of this, to be fair. Yeah, I think in order to fund the other stuff, this is where I could go for Goodmanson here. And then put Potts second on the bench. So that's a rough sort of team. Captaincy between Ekitike, Cunha and Haaland. So that's a decent sort of foundation. If I was free hitting this week, it'd be something like this, but it's not perfect. There's no Arsenal player whatsoever. I think it's a tough game between them and Villa. And whilst I back the Gunners to get the win, it's not going to be easy. And I think the points could be shared quite evenly in that match. So let me know your thoughts in the live chat. And I think it's best to improve upon this free hit team in either the Wildcard Squad video or a separate free hit podcast. I think so. Gabriel's the best Arsenal defender long term. And there are doubts about Timber starting, but I personally think he will start as things stand. Who to bench next week? I have Semenyo, Foden, Cherky, Rodgers, Rice, Thiago, Ekitike, Haaland need to bench one. I'd bench Rodgers personally. Do you think we will get those extra transfers next year? I don't think so. And I think most engaged managers are against it anyway. But I think the way FPL would look at it is maybe they see increases in terms of engagement and people staying or just keep coming back essentially. And if that's the case, and they look at this sort of casual audience and saying, oh, the 5 free transfers has helped, then they could maybe change their perspective and not ignore, but not pay as much attention to what the engaged managers are saying. And that's where they will just think, well, it's best for the game. We keep people engaged. More people will keep coming back if we give them more free transfers and also the extra chips. So it's not conclusive, but at the moment I'd say no, they won't bring it back because it was an AFCON specific thing. My team's similar to yours. What are your plans for next week? I'll talk about this in the team selection. We still have 2 games tomorrow, but of course there's a reaction stream. My original idea, my initial plans include Timber to Gabriel, and even Chow is on the agenda too, but ideally I would just roll because I only have 1 free transfer and it's not a great position to be in. Dorgu coming on for Vanderberg. We take the luck. Very lucky indeed, but you've got to enjoy it. Thank you, Deceptive Banana. Thank you for taking the time out to answer questions. I appreciate it, and thank you very much for the super chat, and a big up to all the contributions you've made to the channel, particularly over the past month. Played the Brathcourt over Bruggen for Gameweek 19. Not a big fan of either, but probably Verbruggen. I think a good rank right now is top 500k, I guess, but look, if you're like 600k, oh no, I'm not top 500. Like, it's still early on in the season, and I'm relatively happy with where I am, but it has been frustrating recently because I've had these patterns before where I'm about to enter the top 100k, and then I sort of keep going down, then up, down, and I've had that sort of pattern over the past couple of seasons, and you want to have continuous progress, but it's not always possible, particularly in FPL. Is Tonali a legit option? Do not want to go for Gordon. Bruno Guimaraes is the best Newcastle midfielder. Just go for him. Tonali, good midfielder, but FPL-wise, I think there are much better. Thank you, Keith. As he says, let's get the likes up. It'd be greatly appreciated. And thank you very much for the kind words. Scored 51 points this game week, so thanks for your help, Dylan. Good score. Very solid, in fact. And in a week like this, I'd definitely take 51 points. So thank you very much. Hopefully you get more points tomorrow if you have any remaining players and secure the green arrow. Should I sell Bruno Guimaraes for Gordon? No. And what's the best 4 midfield lineup? Well, this does change quite regularly, but yeah, I'd say one of Rice or Saka, Cunha, Wirtz, Foden would be up there, but Wirtz is only a short-term thing. I wouldn't include him in terms of the best 4 midfielders long-term. I think Bruno Guimaraes is better, for example. Rodgers as well. I covered Vandenberg's injury. Essentially, he has like a knock, and also Adja's been playing very well. I covered that quote earlier, so I tried to read out here. Let's see if I got it. He picked up a knock and wasn't right for today. Chris Adja has played really well in recent weeks and months. He'll come in. So yeah, there's the quote. Thank you as well to Maro once again. Yes, Haaland in and 2.4 in the bank, but saving for Gabriel Gameweek 20. Yeah, in terms of timing, I think Gabriel in Gameweek 20 is better. There are some concerns about his minutes against Villa and also the quality of opponent. Villa have won 11 consecutive games. They're third in the table. They've beaten the likes of Arsenal and City, and that's not going to be an easy game. I'd expect Villa to score there. Bench 2 from Foden, Thiago, Wilson, Semenyo, Anderson. I would bench Wilson and Anderson. Cheers, Dylan. Might be worth rolling the transfer for Gameweek 19 if you've got decent players you know will play. Exactly. And that's why the hope is Timber's available, and I could roll instead of doing Hincapié to Timber and then Timber to Gabriel and being stuck with 1 free transfer every week. I'd rather have 2 and hold out and have more options later in the season. Maybe, but Bruno G is better for minutes. Yeah, I think he's the best midfielder for Newcastle anyway. He's not going to score that many goals, but he'll get maybe 5+, get a few assists as well. DEFCON, also bonus points, and he's very consistent. Gravenberch or Wilson? I still prefer Wilson, but Gravenberch has had his moments this season. The goal against Wolves, Everton, and he scored more this season against Newcastle away as well. He's a quality midfielder. Yeah, once again, Leap. I'd say yes. Long-term, Gabriel's the best Arsenal defender, so it's worth doing. So, yeah, this message has already been highlighted before. Which Newcastle defender is best? Thought Hall looked good against United. Whilst Dan Burn is out injured, because I think he's the best one overall, I'd say Chow is the best one. I think Calafiori is a sell, based on Arteta's comments, and we can go through that one more time, actually. And for those wondering, by the way, on screen is a sort of provisional rough free hit team. I can delve more into this in a future podcast, maybe a separate free hit video. But let's go to the quotes by Mikel Arteta. So on Calafiori, he said, it was something that he felt yesterday, something very awkward that happened. Today in the warm-up, he wasn't comfortable. And during Timber, the only thing that Arteta said about him is that he landed awkwardly. So we'll see if both of them are available. I think Timber will start against Villa, but Calafiori will not. But yeah, I think Arsenal will be hoping both of them are fit for that clash against the most informed team in the country. So let's now go back to my FPL squad. Not a great week, but still a green arrow somehow, and hopefully Nathaniel Klein can secure that, yeah, that green arrow and that sort of progress. Thank you to Sam for becoming a differential. I appreciate that. And we've got a lot of new members. Yesterday, Paredes gifted 50 memberships, which is an absolute mammoth task and genuinely appreciated. Sam says have Wirtz, Saka, Rodgers, Foden, Wilson, keep them or transfer someone to Cunha. Also, Gabriel is back. Worth taking him in for a -4. I think Gabriel's the best defender in the game. I would not buy him this week for a hit against Villa. So just save that for Gameweek 20. There's no need to sell the likes of Van Dijk or Hincapié to Gabriel for a -4 this week. I just don't think it makes sense. Now, if Gabriel gets a clean sheet, scores, then yeah, you see a massive swing. But I just think the chances of that happening are less likely than just the -4 hit not paying off this week. Timing is very important, and the best time to get Gabriel is Gameweek 20, in my opinion. So keep them or transfer someone to Cunha. I'll be honest, I just keep what you've got. assuming you got enough money, possibly Wilson to Cunha, yes, I'd be on board with that. But I would not sell Foden, Rodgers, Saka, or Wirtz to Matheus Cunha. I'd only sell Wilson, who is still a good option at his price, by the way. Unfortunately, no players left for me to play, but with 51 points, I can't complain. Yeah, exactly. The green arrow is secured, and 51 is a solid score. If I'm to replace Van den Berg, I think I'll go for Hall. That's fair enough. Lewis Hall was quite decent last season before his injury, and I think he could get a few bonus points. But in terms of DEFCON, I think that's changed things a little bit this season, because I think in previous seasons we opt for fullbacks over centre-backs, and now that dynamic has shifted. Keane Lewis Potter thoughts? Yeah, he's playing really forward, and I've talked about this before the Wolves game. That was my prediction for him to play left wing, essentially, and Schade on the right. I just don't trust Brentford defensively, but if you want that sort of attacking punt for the next couple of weeks, I think Lewis Potter makes sense, but yeah, I'm not as bullish on him as others are. Should I sell Gravenberch for Cherky or Wilson or none? I think Gravenberch is decent. He's not a sell, but I'd be tempted to go for Cherky with his recent form. Would you take a -4 to get Ekitike? It depends on the situation and who you're selling to get Ekitike, but I'd probably do it, yeah. In a lot of situations, not all of them. So rather bench Wilson or Anderson? I'd rather bench Anderson, as I said before. I have 2 free transfers. Do you think Saka and Anderson out for Cunha and Gordon is good? I like Cunha, but I don't think I'd sell Saka and Anderson, personally. It might pay off this week. I'm not going to deny that, but I don't think so. I still like Saka long term. Thank you, Sam, and I wasn't aware that you're from Sweden, but big up to you. I appreciate you becoming a differential. As Keith says, welcome to the differential tier. Bruno G or Rice? Both are solid options, but I've said this very consistently. Declan Rice is my preference. Both of them are featured in multiple wildcard videos this season, but I think Rice is even better. So, thank you everyone for tuning in for the past couple of hours. It is greatly appreciated, and hopefully you have enjoyed the stream and found it insightful. If that's the case, then drop a like on this stream, subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so you're always up to date on my content. Both FPL and UCL Fantasy and Matchday 7 content will return in January. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM. There's also my Discord server for FPL and UCL Fantasy updates, and also a great community to be a part of, bouncing ideas off each other and also helping each other out with injuries, suspensions, and conundrums like benching dilemmas and captaincy choices. There is also my FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues in the description. The same goes for my Spotify, and that's another way of engaging with the content, watching it on that platform, leaving a 5-star review really helps us out. And go to patreon.com/FPL Dylan or click the join button on YouTube to gain early access to my videos, proud to comments, and many other perks. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, which is a couple of days away from 2026. This will be the final reaction stream of the calendar year, but there's going to be one more stream before we get to the 1st of January, and that's going to be the deadline stream in a couple of days' time. So stay tuned for that, and the plan is to record a Transits podcast, a team selection, and a wildcard video, and the free hit could also be covered either in that wildcard squad or possibly in a separate free hit podcast. Best English defender for the upcoming 8. Best English defender? Michael Keane? That's the one that springs to mind. It'd be Ekitike in for either Raul Jimenez or Thiago, but it would cost me a -4. I'd sell Raul Jimenez despite the recent form. And by the way, I sold Jimenez to Ekitike recently, and they've both scored the same number of points, 14. Thank you so much for your help, Dylan. Appreciate you answering my questions every stream. Thank you very much, Shah. That's very much appreciated, and it's always good to see you in these deadline streams and reactions, so thank you very much. Twisted Parky says, all I wanted was for Santa to bring me another 150 points, and he didn't. That's a tall ask, to be fair, especially in a week like this where 70 points looks like gold, let alone 150, but I get your point. Yeah, the last 3 Gameweeks have been a bit disappointing, but look, if I can secure green arrows tomorrow somehow, I'd be very glad. But yeah, everyone's situation is different. Thanks for all your help, and happy Christmas again, mate. Thank you, Keith. The same goes to you, and enjoy the New Year celebrations. Best players to bring in next week: Matheus Cunha, Florian Wirtz, Ekitike. I'd still rather go for Ekitike over Wirtz, by the way. I'm still going to be very bullish on that. I think Gabriel's a great option, but the best time to buy him is Game Week 20. With Newcastle, Bruno Guimaraes, Chow. Short term, you could say Gordon, but I wouldn't necessarily buy him with a view of the long term. Thank you, Keith. Best captain for Game Week 19. My current top 3, not in order, will be Haaland, Ekitike, and Cunha. I'll talk more about this in my team selection and the next deadline stream. Cheers, Nighthawk. Should I sell Gravenberch to Minter? Minter was very impressive against Arsenal off the bench, but I wouldn't sell Gravenberch at the moment. But Santa has the skills. Maybe not in FPL, though. That's the thing. And there's always this debate. Skill versus luck. Let's not actually delve into that because that's always a commonly asked question and debate. But yeah, Santa I don't think really cares about FPL like that. So maybe he didn't care enough to really grant your wish. Actually, that's not a good thing to say in Christmas. My apologies, mate. Thanks, mate. Take care, everyone. Hope you all have a great festive period. Definitely. It's been a blast talking to all of you for the past 2 hours. Hopefully you enjoyed the content and there's plenty more headed your way for FPL and UCL Fantasy. Take care. Enjoy the football. All the best of luck for the remainder of Game Week 18 with 2 matches concluding the match day tomorrow. And of course, Game Week 19 is just around the corner and all the videos coming up will help you prepare for that deadline and beyond. I'll see you soon.